Surprise, Sydney.
Corn syrup. Same stuff they use for pig's blood in Carrie.
I told you not to hang up on me.
Oh, you want to play psycho killer? Can I be the helpless victim?
There's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect.
My mom and dad are
I'm afraid that was a wrong answer.
Okay, let's see. No, please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
Hello, Sydney.
Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Matt and I'm here with Andrew. Today we're going to be talking about the Scream franchise, including Wes Craven and all the players involved and how it revolutionized the horror genre. So grab your popcorn and Reese's Pieces and let's break it down on Season 2 of the Post Credit Podcast.
Really doing all these exorcisms and things like that, they would want to bring attention to it so then, people don't think it's a bunch of hooey,
Hooey Baloo?
Yeah.
Well, people have got all kinds of ways to explain different things.
Yeah.
Do you want that light on?
No, I'm
I
good.
feel like it's too dark or anything?
No, I'm good.
So,
I'd rather be dark.
be nice and dark. Dude, this movie came out in 1996.
Uh-huh.
Do you know that was 24 years ago?
Oh, I watched this movie. I believe I watched it in the theater, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying. It's 24 years ago. Jeez.
I was in high school at the time.
How old does that make me feel?
I remember when these movies came out in high school. It was the thing to do because, it was around Halloween, but it was like because we lived in such a small town that it was like the thing to do, go to the movie theaters or, cruise the strip or, go to a football game or whatever. But, it was like going to these movies, it was all about these scary movies and then going to haunted houses or whatever,
Yeah. Well, I suppose we should get into it.
All right.
So today we're talking about Scream. I think we're primarily going to probably talk about just the first movie, but we're also going to be talking about all the other movies too.
I'm going to throw you for a loop on that one.
Oh, why is that?
Because I want to talk about the third one too.
Yeah, well, I want to get into all of them, is what I'm saying, but I want to concentrate more on the first one, just meaning the revolutionary turn that this horror movie brought all the horror movies that came afterwards, because everything from 1996 to now, all the horror movies that have come out, the popular horror movies, PG-13 mainly, it's all based off of Scream.
Yeah, but
being meta.
Well, no, it's the slasher. I kind of disagree with you just a little bit on that because it's a slasher film. It's the quintessential, literal meaning of slasher film.
I was talking about like urban legends that came out. I know what you did last summer. All these different.
Yeah, it's probably like the third or fourth revolution of horror movies.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That was back in the 70s.
So you had like Frankenstein and all that in the early.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Wolfman and everything.
Third.
And then in the 70s we had Chainsaw Massacre, and that's when you started getting like the slasher type movies, and then also in the 70s Michael Myers and everything, and then it wasn't until Krueger,
the first Nightmare came out in 78. So
no, I thought it was 84. I'm pretty sure it was 84.
What were you thinking? No, the first Halloween came out in 78. That's right.
So you got Halloween came out, and then the first Friday the 13th came out in 81, I believe. Yeah. And then I believe Nightmare, it was 84. So that was kind of like one of the later ones, but that's because Wes Craven took all of that nuance, all the things that made those movies successful, and put his own little flair on it.
Well, and I see what you mean. It was just the revolution of that time. Like horror movies were just kind of, nobody cared about them anymore. You know what I mean? If you
talking about when Scream came out, yeah. They had gone away. Yeah. It was all about sci-fi, action, different things like that. But horror was pretty much done.
And the same thing happened in the like middle, like maybe around 2005, or no, probably around like 2008, 2009. That's when you really start getting from there on. For almost 10 years, you're getting into a lot of garbage horror movies that are just nothing is like standing out like The Ring, like in the early 2000s.
Anything, they weren't really
Grudge.
horror movies. I guess they were, but like you had a lot of
Saws and stuff.
Well, and you had vampire movies and you had zombie movies and stuff. But I don't know if I really consider those. Obviously, they're horror movies. But it's not like a singular stalker.
They're gore, slashers. There's different
I'm talking
categories.
about the singular killer stalker that's coming after somebody. You have your horror movie villains, right? You have your Michael Myers, your Jason Voorhees, your Freddy Krueger, all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, everything had kind of died down. I think Wes Craven hadn't done anything in a while. I mean, he did. I think he did Vampire in Brooklyn and something else, but he just wasn't doing too well. I mean, he tried New Nightmare that was in the early 90s.
But we got to admit that Wes Craven's what made him great and what makes his name even known was Freddy Krueger. I mean, it is.
That's what put him on the map.
That put him on the map.
He still did I think Last House on the Left and all that kind of stuff before that. But
I guarantee you, he has a bigger audience for Nightmare on Elm Street than he does for anything else he's ever done.
Yeah.
I mean, God honest truth. And I'm not saying that again, Scream was extremely popular, but it still does not hold as much weight as Nightmare did, and continues to even this day. Nightmare, Jason, Michael Myers. I mean, that if you notice, and here's the thing I've noticed with this is that we not only have the Scream movies, right? Mm-hmm. We're about to have another one, from what I'm hearing.
That's what I heard too.
And then also we have the Scream TV show, which there's like 4 seasons of already. Of the Scream television show. Mm-hmm. So, it's kind of carried over where, it's reigniting, but I was thinking more when you throw something back up,
regurgitating.
Yeah, there we go. It's more regurgitating than anything else, I think. Because you look at that one, like Scream, for instance. I mean, it's kind of like kicking a dead horse, And same thing with Jason. How many movies have they made of Jason? And even worse with Halloween movies, they are constantly keep putting out Halloween movies. I mean, if you were to count all of them up to date, there's probably 15 at least. I mean, again, with Jason, there's we're up to 13, I think.
Of Jason?
Yeah, is it like 12 or 13 different movies?
Well, let's see. Jason X was 10, which would mean Freddy vs. Jason was 11, and then they had the remake in the early 2010s, or maybe it was 2009 when it came out.
Jared Padalecki in that one.
Yeah, so what's that, 12 I guess we've had? I don't think he's been back since then.
Yeah. And the thing is you see a lot of these, even Ghostface, from Scream, and then Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees and Chucky. None of them, I mean, it can literally be a different actor behind that every second of the film. Mm-hmm. You could literally every second of the film have a different actor and nobody know the difference. Where with Robert Englund, you kind of knew.
It's all about the voice.
Yeah, because the voice,
he had no
mask. Look. Yeah, it was. He had the makeup, but
even though his burns look different in every single movie.
Yeah, but I mean,
depending
again,
on who was doing the makeup.
but it still played it off. I mean, he's the only one that's really, anybody really kind to You know what I mean?
But that's what helped revolutionize this movie.
Correct.
Is that it could be anybody, right? Yeah. To go over Wes Craven's past, I mean, he's done some of the the most classic horror films of all time. He wrote and directed Last House on the Left. He did The Hills Have Eyes, Swamp Thing, Nightmare on Elm Street. He only did the first one, and he did A New Nightmare, which came out later. So he didn't do any of the sequels, which they make reference to in Scream whenever he said, I like, the killer tells Casey, I like that one. She goes, yeah, well, the first one was good, but the rest of them sucked. And, that was a little jab in there by Wes Craven about hey, my nightmare was great. And then they turned him into
my Dream Warriors happens to be my favorite of the Nightmare series.
Dream Warriors, and that's a lot of Freddy fans, that's their favorite is Dream Warriors. That's number 3, right?
Yeah. I did like the one with Roseanne and Tom Arnold.
Oh, that one is hated by. That's the.
No, I'm being sarcastic when I say it. I just thought it was hilarious where he gets the GameCube,
or the Game Boy glove, or whatever the gaming glove. What was it called? Freddy's Dead Final Nightmare.
Yeah. That one got to the point where you're just like, hey, this is ridiculous.
It was a little too much. So, but I mean, he had done all these classics. But like I said, after that, as we were getting into the 90s, horror was dying, and you just didn't have the scares anymore because it was the chop 'em up and the people got tired of like the grisly murders and all that kind of stuff, and it was just old, and all the tropes. It was like people got tired of going to the movies, right, and seeing what is it? Seeing somebody running up the stairs instead of going out the front door, having sex and doing drugs and alcohol during the movie. People got sick of watching these Jason movies and these Freddy movies where it's like, oh, these people are making the same stupid mistakes. And what made Scream so good is it addressed all those things that it's like, okay, well, instead of trying to work around them or instead of trying to ignore them, let's address them. Let's get meta about this. Let's make this a movie.
It's a study guide inside of a movie.
Right, and it's a movie about scary movies.
Yeah.
So this is, the Scream franchise stretches over a couple decades and everything, but the very first Scream came out in 1996, and it was written by Kevin Williamson and directed by Wes Craven. What did Kevin Williamson do before this? Do you know? I think he was a writer on a TV show or something.
That sounds about. Yeah. Where did I see that? You'll have to look it up.
Maybe not, because his first writing credit on IMDb is Scream.
Yeah.
And followed by, this is the guy who wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer. He also wrote Scream 2 and Scream 4. He wrote The
it
Faculty,
definitely had that feel, though, right?
Teaching Mrs. Tingle, all these, young adults, edgy, late 90s edgy.
No, it's all what I grew up with. It's all what I grew up with. It's when I was in high school, these were the movies that, kept us entertained. And you can feel with all those movies you were stating, you can just feel the same feel, watching that movie as you do, this, I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream and stuff like that. That same feel, you got that same feel watching that movie. And I just think that, it's, and like you said, it's an encyclopedia of knowledge about horror movies. Everything down to the characters. Even every single character serves a certain role that all scary movies follow.
Yeah, and if there's one word to describe this series, it's meta. And they use that word so many times. It's addressing yourself, but it's a smart way to do that because that allows you to then still use those tropes that are in horror movies. But to let everybody know, hey, we're aware we're using this, but we're trying to do things in a different way. These are the tropes that you need for a horror movie, but let us try to use it and give you a different, a scare a different way, or whatever.
Well, it's like, they constantly are breaking the fourth wall in a way that's not like directly breaking the fourth wall, like. It's
like in part 2 when you have Dewey and Randy sit down, and they're like, okay, well, what is going on? So Randy breaks down. Oh, we can't do this. You may be a suspect. I may be a suspect, and everything. So it's like it's doing all the things like me and you are sitting at this table doing in breaking down these movies. That's what they do during the movie. So that was pretty interesting that they did it that way.
Well, and it's funny because they talk about it literally through all 4 movies. They reference this.
How meta?
Yes, and how meta it is, and how even the town of Woodsboro feels like a Hollywood set.
Yeah.
So when you go to like the third movie and you actually see a Hollywood set on the movie, you're kind of like, okay, this looks like the set, but it's actually probably what we saw in the first movie. It's probably literally the set of the first movie.
Oh, where you see it in part 3?
Yeah.
Now, here's the and I think some of them were done on location because you just like at Stu's house at the end, you get to see like a long shot of where the town is, right before the credits kick in or whatever. But it's stated outright by Billy Loomis. He says, It's whenever Sidney says, oh, this isn't a movie, and he goes, yeah, it is. He goes, this is all just one big movie. You know, so I mean, it's outright stated by Billy. Now maybe he's talking about life or whatever, but I mean, it's basically outright stated by Billy that yes, this is a movie, and you know, it's I don't know, it's a very unique way to look at it, because audiences will go in being like, you know, like I said, you know, the reason that people were getting bored with it because it was the same tropes over and over and over. So this movie said, okay, well, let's address those tropes, let's do them better, and Kevin Williamson's script, it made it just this phenomenal paced and written and plotted out movie.
Well, it almost felt like a reality TV show. You know, when it comes down to it, like the people in the movie are all part of a reality TV show,
right? You
know, and the way that it's set up and everything, you know, you kind of almost think that, okay, maybe this is somewhat planned out, you know, and we're gonna see a live audience behind them and just catch a glimpse of it real quick, you know?
Yeah, see, and then you get movies like Halloween Resurrection, where they had the cameras and it was a real reality show, and even little parts of Part 4, Scream 4, has those little nuances.
I've got to say this.
I was like, please don't do that. Please don't do shaky cam stuff.
I've got to say this, that I think the one thing, and this is a little bit off topic, but the one thing that I think has ruined horror movies since like early 2000s, anything after that is just garbage. I think what's ruined it is these cameras inside of the movie. You know, like Paranormal Activities.
Found footage.
Yeah, I mean, and granted, our generation started it with Blair Witch Project, you know, but
see, the unique thing about that is it only works once.
It did, but that's the problem, is that they think it works every single time now. Where literally the Blair Witch Project took away that idea of it.
Well, what's scary about that idea is that you don't know if it's real. So if you know that it's fake, you know that it's actually called a found footage horror movie or whatever, you know it's fake, and it immediately takes all the scariness out of it, and then you're just watching cool trick cameras, you know, trick photography and everything. What was good about the Blair Witch Project is because the way they marketed it, nobody had any idea these were actors.
Exactly.
Nobody had any idea that these weren't real people, as far as the way it was marketed. And when you first went and watched it, the world, even news channels and stuff, were like wondering if this was some kind of a snuff film that somebody had found footage or whatever. And so, and then it wasn't until like I think a couple months after it came out, you saw the 3 people that were in that movie. I can't even remember their names now. Yeah. They showed up at the MTV Movie Awards and stuff, and then that kind of took the whole shade of is it real down, and you're like, okay, well these people were just actors.
Well, that's kind of like with the Sixth Sense.
It's never worked after that.
Exactly. It's like watching the Sixth Sense. You can't watch it again. You really can't.
Once the genie's out of the bottle, then it's out of the bottle.
And I personally, again, I know it's off topic, but that I truly believe that has ruined horror movies. Ever since that they started doing that, I think it just
you think found footage and like shaky cam, or just the found footage type format?
I mean, a little bit of both, really.
And
the shaky cam, I don't like any of that stuff, because to me it feels like it's just let's throw a camera inside a camera, and then we can save a buttload of movie because we don't have to have the screen perfect or the quality of the picture perfect. You know?
I get it. You got to be more realistic and everything, and it creates tension. It feels like you're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, it goes along with the same thing where Michael Caine was telling Christian Bale when he actually took a nap and wanted to be woken up right before they yelled action in that Batman movie when he was waking up in bed.
Yeah.
He goes, well, you know, I just want to make sure that I want to be like really asleep, and you know, all this kind of stuff. And Michael Caine's like, have you ever tried acting? You know, you're just like there's an acting. People go to the movies to not have this crazy realistic experience. Yeah. They expect to see cinema. So that's whenever you have like the shaky cams, I'm like, maybe some people like it. It gives me a headache, and I'm just like, I want to see cinema. I know that this is a movie. Show it to me. Create that tension in a different way than going like this with the camera.
And I think what's great with Scream, right, is that it has a way of adding comedy to a slasher horror film that doesn't basically put it into the category of being, you know, horror / comedy or comedy / horror, you know, that it's actually still a horror movie, even though it still makes you gives a little bit of comedy there. You know what I mean? Like I mean, you got certain characters, Matthew Lillard, you got the guy that played Randy,
you know, Jamie, what's his name?
Jamie Kennedy.
Jamie Kennedy.
But you got those actors, you know, that really can can do that. You know what I mean? That they, it's just kind of. I'm just trying to think. I mean, Jamie Kennedy pretty much acts that same role in pretty much everything, but it's same
Jamie
thing with
Kennedy Project. Remember?
Yeah.
His punked rip off the Jamie Kennedy Project or whatever.
But no, it's just that's what's great about Scream is that it does pull off a little bit of comedy. And same thing, Wes Craven's been doing this forever. You watch Freddy Krueger; it's the same situation where it's like, I mean, Freddy Krueger slashes somebody's throat and he's laughing about it. But there's other people laughing too.
Yeah, and he did that a little bit in the first movie, but it wasn't really like, I don't know. And he wrote that. He wrote the first Nightmare, and there wasn't a whole lot of comedy to it.
Well, part 2 was ridiculous.
Right, and he didn't write that.
I know.
But I think what you're getting there is all from Kevin Williamson, because if some of his scripts, you look at like The Faculty and Disturbing Behavior, all these different movies that he did, it's like, he has his hand on the pulse of the teens of that day, the young people of that day.
Who now Wes Craven or
no, Kevin Williamson.
Yeah, but you kind of see. I've heard things about Wes Craven, how he is very stickler about certain things. Like when he writes scripts and stuff, he literally lets nobody watch it until he is complete.
Right, but he didn't write the script.
I know, but what I'm saying is, like, I just kind of feel like that kind of personality wouldn't give him such a free reign, especially somebody that has not really done anything else.
And I'm sure he does, like what a lot of directors do. I don't want to film this scene. I don't like that line or whatever. They'll cut little things here and there, based on what they're allowed to do and everything. I think a lot of the humor, a lot of the way it connected with younger audiences, that has to do with Kevin Williamson and the scaring of audiences that this younger generation that hadn't seen Freddy or any of these and weren't used to horror movies, because this industry the horror genre had died down at that point. Then they see a movie that's written by somebody like Kevin Williamson, who's such a great writer and can not only write good stories but good scripts, dialogue and pacing and all that. And then you merge that with a horror director like Wes Craven, a legend. Yeah. I mean, it just blew these new audiences away that didn't, like you and I, grew up with watching these horror movies,
right.
Even though they came before us or whatever. But, one of the smartest things I think this movie did before it was even a movie is the way it marketed it. And it marketed it with Drew Barrymore as the lead.
Yeah.
And she was perfect for that role that she had. And I think pretty much all like the trailers and marketing was all around that first scene, right?
Yeah.
Like Neve Campbell was barely in any of the marketing. She was this, new actor from, Party of Five, and she hadn't.
But they talk about this in the fourth one, right? In the fourth movie, they kind of bring this up about having, how the killer is like killing in order of the original, where it's like you get the hot girl at the front, and then you get the the boyfriend, or who was it? What is it? The hot girl at the front, and then the next person that dies is usually.
Well, in every Scream movie, the person the person that's starting off the scene, is going to die.
Is going to die.
So that and you
Drew Barrymore set that one off.
Yeah, and you didn't know that before this movie came out. And then every subsequent movie, the writers and the director, they didn't have to address it, because you knew coming in, whoever we're seeing first, that's who's getting hacked off.
Literally, probably the most famous actor in the whole movie is Drew Barrymore.
Yeah, I mean, even more so than David Arquette and Courtney Cox. They were still TV actors. David Arquette had been around for a while, did a few things, but I mean, mainly you had this movie filled with teen actors, or not teen actors, TV actors. And you had Drew Barrymore, who was like a legend from when she was younger doing horror movies and everything. So the fact that this started out with Drew Barrymore and with her completely getting killed off, because this movie and the marketing, it made it look like Drew Barrymore's character was the final girl. And for those of you that don't watch a lot of horror movies, final girl, that's a term used to describe, basically, it's usually a female that makes it to the end of the movie and is the
Jamie Lee Curtis,
the one that finally kills and overcomes the killer or the threat or whatever. That's the final girl.
She's like Jamie Lee Curtis is the quintessential final girl. I mean,
She's like the quintessential scream
queen / final girl, because I mean, literally,
scream queen.
She is the one that always escaped. Yeah. Always, no matter
she's
what.
Got that scream.
Yeah, exactly. She is. She really is like the quintessential, scream queen, of and final girl. But yeah, with this movie, like Neve Campbell, I think she did an outstanding job in this movie, because she didn't seem like, she played the victim, because in one of the movies, I can't remember if it was the third or the fourth one, but she was, I think it was the fourth one.
Talking about Drew Barrymore?
Yeah, no. Neve Campbell's character, how she's always the victim. You know what I mean? Like, through all these movies, she's always been labeled as the victim. And I think it was her niece, Emma Roberts' character, was saying something. Huh?
Are you talking about just Scream movies?
Yeah, no, yeah.
Okay.
Just the fact that she was saying, somebody was saying in the movie, I think it was her niece, but
like, she wasn't a victim in Wild Things.
No. Well,
sure.
I mean,
she came out on top on that. She was the mastermind behind that.
I know, but I'm saying, like, in
spoiler alert.
Yeah, I'm saying, like, in the Scream movies, she's always playing the victim. She's like I
think she always gets made to be the victim.
I wrote some things down, and because this movie is so set up as basically explaining horror movies and how to basically survive horror movies. I mean, that's the name of them. If the movie wasn't called Scream, it should be How to Survive Horror Movies.
Right.
Scary movies, whatever. But and even all the characters, like you were saying before, even the characters serve certain roles that all scary movies have. And I wrote some of them down, and I changed the names. What a lot of people would reference them. Like Sydney, who's, you always have the heroine that's always having to be saved or something like that. But I always said the always chased is Sydney. The savior is always going to be Dewey. The one who always needs redemption is Gail. The fourth wall breaker is Randy. The always accused is Cotton. And the one who starts everything basically is Sid's mom, in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, she, man, Maureen, she's had a rough time of it. You find out over the course.
I mean, she really hasn't. I mean, she's everybody else is suffering.
Well, what I mean is, like, over the course of 3 or 4 movies, she gets made worse and worse and worse, and
but
until
the third
finally
one's
in the end,
redeemed, though, if you think about it.
Kind of, but not really. I mean, she still. I mean, yeah, she had a traumatic event happen to her
in Hollywood
before the events of the movie started, and but she went on to be very promiscuous and everything. And not that I'm saying that's what leads to murder or anything, but I mean, it pissed some people off, and it got more and more to where you're like, oh, this chick, she had some kind of a reputation. She lived quite a life,
as we learn in the third one.
Yeah.
She even Sid says it. She says, like, basically that her mother caused everything. That she asked her father, hey, what if mom, never did this or never did that, or if mom never did what she did, kind of thing like that. And it's like, if you think about it, if her mom would have kept it in her pants, then everything would have been fine and dandy. But then again, we wouldn't have these movies, And
we would have, we got to tell a story, right?
Right.
So Scream came out in 1996. It was directed by Wes Craven. Kevin Williamson wrote it. It starred, the very first movie, it starred Drew Barrymore, Roger Jackson. He plays the voice. You also have Neve Campbell, Skeet Ulrich, Courtney Cox, Rose McGowan, David Arquette, Matthew Lillard. These were all the stars of the first one. And the way this movie came about is Kevin Williamson. He was back in 1990. There was a guy named what was his name?
River Phoenix.
No, not James. That was the father. Was it Dennis? I can't remember. There was a guy. He was nicknamed the Gainesville Ripper, and that was something that happened in Florida, in Gainesville, Florida. There was a guy, Danny Rolling. That was his name. He went to a university and killed it was something like 5 people over 3 days. And he wasn't even caught for it. He got arrested for something else, and he copped to it whenever he got arrested. Say, hey, by the way, I killed all those people. And it was known as the Gainesville Ripper. Well, it was giving Kevin Williamson some nightmares. He thought, something like that might happen to him. And he decided to write this movie, Scream, about somebody who goes after, mostly, women. Teenage women or whatever. In real life, it was college, and here in the movie, it's high school. As we said before, the movie was marketed with Drew Barrymore being the lead, but that's not the case. So she's in about the first 15 minutes. So what's the first scene? About 10, 15 minutes, something like that. Would you say this is the best opening to any horror movie of all time?
I don't know. Freddy vs. Jason was pretty good.
As an opening?
Yeah, I kind of actually really like that one, to be honest with you.
Well, Freddy vs. Jason, that was more just Freddy kind of talking about what happened.
Because they're forgetting about him, and so he has to get somebody that's kind of lives between both worlds.
Right, so he gets
so that he
Jason.
can wake up.
But, I mean, you don't really get to see anything that happened. It's just like suddenly he appeared on a street, and then the movie started. I don't know, that was weird.
Well, the things that the ones that used to freak me out were Hellraiser, because I mean the beginning of those movies are. That's where all the
stuff that I don't watch.
I don't watch it anymore. Don't get me wrong. I mean, when I was younger, I watched stuff like that, but a little bit. Not too young, Mom.
Yeah,
but just saying.
I don't like getting into stuff that is really heavy on demonic stuff, and I think that's pushing it too much for me. But it's Nightmare on Elm Street, the very first Wes Craven Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, what did you think of that the first time you saw it? I mean, the whole opening in a boiler room.
Yeah.
You had what's her name with the nightgown on, and you're like, what is this chick doing with a nightgown in this what looks like in a factory or a warehouse boiler room or whatever? Like, and that whole thing with Screech, him scraping his claws against it. I mean, you have certain horror movie openings that are just like chilling.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of them, that's one good thing with or one of the many good things with Wes Craven is that the guy had a way of. He had theme songs for his scary movies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, and I mean, even the Scream, I mean, when that movie first came out, it was crazy because, it was around Halloween time. So basically, I remember.
I think it was December, actually.
Okay, well.
It was right near Halloween.
Either way, like right after that, then, that first year after that, everybody was that character, Ghostface, for Halloween.
It was very popular.
It was very, very popular.
I had one. I think that first year, that's who I was.
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually,
I remember getting one of those ghosts because I had done Jason with a hockey mask before that, and then it was Ghostface after that. But I just think, I mean, another opening that comes to mind is My Soul to Take. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It came out in like 2010. It's one of Wes Craven's later movie. But the start of that movie where you got the guy and he's watching the police report about this serial killer. And then he finds this knife that the news described as the serial killer's, and he's like, what the heck? And then he kind of flips it like he knows how to use it, and then he's like, what? And then suddenly it flashes, and he's in the bathroom, and he's like, how did I get in the bathroom? And then you start to find out, and he calls his doctor, and he's like, it's happening again. You find out he's got split personality, and one of his personalities is the killer. Yeah. And he's with his wife, and he's like, oh my God, I don't want to let this personality take over while I'm at the home with my wife and my kids and stuff. And then there's that whole scene. I won't say what happens in it, but it was like a heart pumping opening. I was like, man, this is gonna be and then the rest of the movie was terrible.
What was it?
Because then it was just kids, and it was just one random kid. Because then what happened when he died? Like, I guess all his personalities split and went into like 7 babies or 8 babies that were born that night or whatever. But the premise of the movie, the beginning of it was a good opening. So this opening, it's so iconic. Everybody's seen it. It starts off. It says Scream, and it's not even in like the titles that we're used to. It's just Scream, and then suddenly the phone's ringing and she's picking it up, and we're into it. Usually there's a little bit of setup in horror movies or whatever, but I mean, we hear the killer's voice, bam, within the first 5-10 seconds. And it's a chilling voice and everything. And, she's making popcorn and the popcorn sets on fire. And, she's talking to this guy played by Roger Jackson. And actually, Nev Campbell...
And who makes popcorn like that nowadays?
You got Jiffy Pop on them. But, in the late 90s, that might have been easy to make or whatever. But, Nev Campbell and Drew Barrymore, they didn't actually meet Roger Jackson, who played the voice of the killer, until after filming. And in Drew Barrymore's case, after she was done filming that first scene, when she was done with the movie or whatever. But they and Wes Craven didn't want them to meet it because the voice scary.
They want to just hear the voice and them not to know what the person looks like. I mean, the guy could be like a 4'8" person with a balding man that's about 50 years old.
He's kind of like an average looking guy, a little overweight, and he's just not intimidating looking at all. If you look him up, it's just got glasses and everything. He kind of looks like Dave Filoni.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it kind of looks like that. But anyways, it starts off with this whole thing, and what's cool about this movie is it's not just a killer that's after them, or you have a named killer, like who it is: Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, Charles Lee Ray. Leatherface. Leatherface kind of had Leatherface, but that's just what his brother or whoever it was that called him Leatherface. And so, it's just like you have these names. Yeah. But with this one, it was not only an unknown killer, but the scene after this first scene where they get killed, when the kids are all talking by the water fountain, when they're like speculating, was it you? Oh, but it was you. I wonder who did it. Then that kind of told you, okay, this is a whodunit movie. And as we've talked about with our Knives Out review, I love whodunit type of movies where you have to find out who the kids. So most of the movie is your brain is preoccupied with who is it, who's behind that mask. So whereas other movies, you know who it is. It's just some scary machine that's not an unstoppable machine that's coming to kill you. And everything, and with this one, it could be anybody. It could be the person right next. And you have to have really smart writing to be able to not have anybody pick out who it is. The obvious choice is going to be the boyfriend, right?
Yeah.
The moody boyfriend who wants a little, wants to get frisky with her, or wants to do a little too much or whatever. You start to think, Skeet Ulrich is a certain type of looking guy, where you're just like, there's something weird about this person and everything. So that's like, you have your obvious one, and then you have your, where did that come from? Yeah. And that's what Matthew Lillard's Stu came from. Yeah. But I don't know. I think that this is probably, the best opening for a horror movie of all time. I think it's one of the, definitely one of the most iconic. I think it's at least my favorite. Good, yeah, and you have Evil Dead 1 and your Evil Dead remakes and stuff like that. But I don't think there's a lot that I think Scream has earned its place in that ranking as far as being as terrifying as it is. So
yeah, let me think, because as far as, how would you classify the movie? You said it was like more of a whodunit, right? But wouldn't it be a slasher still?
I think it's still a slasher. But with most slasher movies, you're just kind of waiting in anticipation for them to defeat them or run away or get away from them.
And a lot of times you'll mix in with a little bit of supernatural into that too.
But it's not very often you're spending pretty much the whole movie trying to guess who it is that's killing them. So that's what I think made part of what made it unique.
I think it falls in a weird category too, because nowadays, like, you do have your slasher movies, but there's somewhat supernatural feel to them. There's Freddy Krueger goes only into your dreams, and Jason for some reason never dies. Michael Myers is kind of a conundrum, I think. Chucky, supernatural, but most of these type of slasher films are usually somewhat supernatural. You don't really have like a, it'll slowly, the more you get to like a serial killer feel, it goes more into like the thriller feel rather than a slasher horror movie feel anymore, And it's a true slasher horror movie, you really don't see that anymore. Like maybe Last House on the Left, certain things like that, where there's no real supernatural feel to it anymore. It's genuinely a slasher movie where like, you know, Saw does a fun, you know, that's kind of more of a what do they call it, a bondage horror movie or
They call
something?
it torture porn.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
And they even mention it
They
in
do
Scream
in
4.
Scream, yeah.
But I mean, yeah, that's what it was. I mean, Hostel,
yep, exactly.
Saw, all those different
I Know What You Did
movies.
Last Summer. You know, all those movies fell into that category. You know,
and it's just, I think I don't know what you did last summer. I think that's more kind of around Scream and everything. But I mean,
no, that's what I'm saying. It's more like Scream.
Yeah, it's just, you know, and now of course
Urban legends
for the last
too.
decade, we've just had nothing but the demonic, haunting, poltergeisty type stuff where it's just like, you know, The Conjuring, and it's we're in Conjuring Part 87 now. I mean, it's just, there's so many.
They're going apart. No, I wouldn't knock those movies. Those are, I think, the only good movies that come out in the last 10 years. The Conjuring,
But I mean, it's all
Annabelle,
about haunted dolls and
The Nun was freaky.
Yeah, and La Llorona, or
La Llorona,
something like
or
that.
something.
You know, we're too white to pronounce that. But I mean, it's just, it's one of those things where it's like all these movies, and none of them are smart. It's all about getting the jump scares and all that kind of stuff. Whereas this movie, yeah, there were jump scares. There's a lot of them, and there's a lot of fake jump scares in it. But it was still fresh back then, so you know, I can't knock it for that. And it still had some legitimate thrills because, I mean, even if you're not scared by the jump set, you're still kind of engaged into the story. You're still engaged on who did it, who did what, and the story. So the story of Scream is, we'll just state out right here, is that what made this unique and what made it kind of have its little twist ending was that there was two killers instead of one. And, you know, you expect Ghostface to just to be one. Has there ever been a movie where you think it was one and it was actually two killers? I'm sure there is.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure there is. But, you know, it's just not on the top of our heads right now. But, I mean, that's one of these things that made it unique, especially with this this younger generation, this teenage generation that these horror movies are taking place around. But basically what it is the two killers end up being Stu Macher and Billy Loomis. Billy Loomis, the reason that he wanted to do all this is because he found out that his dad stepped out on his mom and was sleeping with his girlfriend Sydney's mom.
Yeah.
And that's the reason his mom left him. And so he was so angry that he wanted to kill Sydney's mom, Maureen Prescott. You find out in later movies that she's had a past, but we'll get into that. But as far as this movie goes right now, she was married to Sydney's dad, and they had what I gleaned from was some kind of a happy marriage. And then suddenly she started stepping out on him. She slept with Billy's dad. She slept with Cotton Weary. And it could have been other people. The thing is, you know, like Sydney's best friend tells her, you know, hey, you hear rumors. You know, you can only hear rumors so many times before you start to believe, you know, they're probably true. Yeah. And so her mom kind of had a bit of a, you know, she had a bit of a stain about her throughout the town and everything.
Scarlet Letter.
Right. So what happened was Billy, you know, his best friend is Stu, and I don't know if they just became friends when they decided to do this, or if they were always friends, and he's like, hey, you want to turn psychopath with me? And Stu's just like, sure, why not? But it was pretty unique that you have two psychopaths willing to murder people that happen to be best friends at the same school, in the same town, in the same friend group as the mother of who's, you know, the person that you're going to kill. Or
well, as we found out that, you know, they like this kind of chemistry in at least 3 of the 4 movies, you know, because it was exactly the same through every single movie except for part 3, where there was always 2 killers, right, you know, kind of situation.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically they put this plan together. They're like, okay, we're going to watch a lot of scary movies, and I don't know why they made scary movies a part of it. You kind of find out in part 3, but I don't know if Billy knew Maureen's history or whatever. But anyways, Billy decided to make it centered around scary movies and what to do in a scary movie, because he was going to be the one that's going to be a slasher. He decided to
right, bro?
Yeah, no, right? So he got with Stu, and they did a lot of research with movies and stuff, and they ended up killing Maureen, Sydney's mom, a year before the movie starts. And then the movie starts a couple days before the anniversary of when Maureen's killed, and that's when they killed the first one in Casey Becker, played by Drew Barrymore. do you get the sense that, how do I want to ask this?
Well, you know why this was such a controversial film when it came out? Because it was really close to what happened in Colorado, like around that time period that Colorado happened. And so they did give a lot of crap for this movie because it was, the Columbine thing. It was very close to within the same, within a few years of Columbine.
I thought that was the second movie. I think that was the second movie because this was 94, 96.
96, I thought.
And Columbine happened in like 97, 98, didn't it?
I think it might have happened before that. Let me see. But from what I heard, there was a lot of controversy because of it. Everything, actually, Massacre was it was in 99.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so what happened was that's why. So Kevin Williams is basically his part 3 because the only Scream that Kevin Williamson didn't write was part 3. And what he was going to do is have like this mass group of teenagers or younger people, followers of Ghostface, come after Sidney. It was going to be a bunch of people.
Yeah.
But then Columbine happened, and it was a little too close.
It was something like that with the controversy.
Yeah, and that was his idea. But then they brought in Aaron Kruger, who I believe wrote Freddy vs. Jason, or is like one of the writers or whatever. But brought him in to write, and then Kevin Williamson's idea actually got turned into a TV show. Do you know which TV show I'm talking about? A group of followers.
Oh, The Following?
The Following.
Yeah.
With Kevin Bacon.
That was an amazing show.
Also created by
pissed me off
created by Kevin Williamson. But I mean that was like basically his plan for part 3.
Yeah.
They turned that into basically
that's awesome.
I guess it had a lot of the elements of what he was planning on doing for part 3. But
now, out of all 4 Scream movies, what's your favorite?
Part 1. I mean, 1's got to be it. I actually had a guilty pleasure favorite. I really liked 3 for the longest time.
I was about to say 3 is my favorite because it rewrites 1.
Yeah, and most people say that that's the worst, and most people don't like it. But in true usual fashion form, you and I end up liking the one that
I literally think that it rewrites the first one, and it makes up with some of the mistakes that the first one made. In the not so much in like the writing of the directors or the writers of the film, but in just some of the mistakes like some of the characters actually make in the first one, where they don't make so many of them in the third one. Like they just seem a lot like, especially with Sydney, she seems like a lot stronger character. And it was near the end there that she was actually the one rescuing Dewey and Gail.
It's just that the tone shifts on that movie a bit, and like quite a bit it shifts. But like objectively, I could say part 1 is the best one, but subjectively, my favorite, I'm not even sure anymore because I used to not like 2 at all, really, and then as I watched it again, I was like, this is actually an okay movie. I didn't mind it as much. I don't like who the killers were, but
you got to admit, I mean, Laurie Metcalf, anything she does is amazing, and just, I thought she always plays kind of a good, crazy kind of person, you know what I mean? Even on Roseanne, she's a little bit loony there, but.
And Andy's mom.
Yeah, Andy's mom.
Toy Story. Well, here, sticking with part 1 first. Let's talk about let's just finish that opening scene real quick. What I liked about this, another thing I liked about this is it showed that I remember what I was going to ask you, but it showed that the killer likes the game, right? So she's going out to she's going out to check on her boyfriend who's tied up on the chair, and in the back patio, she unlocks and opens the door, right? And if the killer wanted to kill her, perfect opportunity right there. He could kill her. But he actually tells her, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And she closes it and locks it again. And so you could see that he likes the game that they're playing. And it's not just about, making a name for yourself. It's about truly terrifying. Because, I mean, nobody else, obviously they don't know we're watching this movie. Nobody else is going to see this murder. It's not like they're taping it like they do in part 4 or whatever. So who cares that he's playing with it? It's just a sadistic way to mess with them, to terrify them before they end up killing them. Because, I mean, you got, like, Jason. He doesn't really play with them. He just goes after him and kills him. Same thing with Michael Myers.
I think it's more of, it's not so much a game to them. I think it's more of a situation where they're in the movie. They're in a horror movie, okay? The killers feel like they're part of a horror movie.
Right.
And they want all these people to act a certain way. It's almost like he's trying to correct horror movies and correct how people act and do things in horror movies that automatically get him killed.
But he's being playfully funny with it, like
I'll be back,
like a horror movie villain might do, and just enjoying it because, like, you know, Billy says later on, it's all one big movie. So yeah, maybe he really sees himself as a horror movie, and he's conducting his own horror movie or whatever.
Because I mean, he even helps him, you know, like saying, you know, things like, hey, you know, I wouldn't lock that, or I wouldn't go there, or don't, you know, I dare you to come outside. You know what I mean? It's kind of one of those things where he's in the own horror movie, and he's kind of directing his own horror movie, you know, and he happens to be the killer, but, you know, people are really dying and things like that. But it's kind of like he's in his own movie, directing his own movie, his own horror flick, and he happens to be the murderer.
Yeah. So I want to go through this too as we talk about it, and talk about since there's multiple killers. I want to talk about each kill. Like, okay, so Casey, who actually killed her? So was it Billy or Stu inside the suit?
It was Stu.
You think it was Stu?
Yeah.
Why do you think it's Stu?
Because I don't think, like, she kind of, the way she acts around him, I mean, that's her boyfriend and everything, you know, but it's like,
Who?
Wait, you're talking about Drew Barrymore, right?
Yeah, Casey at the very beginning.
I think it's both of them.
You think it was both of them?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and the next day, when they were talking at the water fountain, Tatum, played by Rose McGowan, she says, and she's Stu's girlfriend, and she says that he was with her that night.
Yeah.
So I always thought that was just Billy by himself, and that allowed Stu to have an alibi. And then when Billy went to jail, and then Stu called Sydney, that was Billy's alibi. He was in jail, and Stu called her. So, you know, creating alibis for each other. But I have, you know, a huge fan theory does say that this was done by both of them, because the what do you call it? The mechanics and the way it was all laid out in that first scene, it had to have been both of them, because, you know, who's running around the front, who's dragging Stu in his chair and all this kind of stuff. I think that the next scene kind of confirms that Stu wasn't even there, that he was with Tatum, because she obviously said he was with me last night, and she's probably obviously thinking at the time that the murders happened.
But I mean, it could have been later in the night,
because even afterwards, Randy says, "Was that before or after you?" Blah 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 blah. And so I don't know. It could have been, but great opening scene. I think it's a good right after that scene. I think it's a good false red herring when Billy visits Sydney.
Yeah.
Because he's showing you that it's Billy the whole movie.
Yeah.
He's giving you things to doubt that it is, but he's actually showing you that it is. You know, the twist is Stu. The twist is the fact that there's a second person and that it's Stu, which helps to allow for alibis. But did you notice what song was playing when he snuck into Sydney's room and they started making out in the bed? Don't Fear the Reaper.
Oh, yeah.
So they're making out, and he's like, "Don't fear the Reaper, baby, I'm your man," and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I mean, and the ghost face looks like the Grim Reaper and everything. Yeah. So I mean, it's so laid on thick, but you don't notice it at first.
Yeah, and the thing is too is like, you got to get to that point where you're like, okay, you know, Billy's really not. I mean, Billy's crazy, don't get me wrong. Billy's a little insane. But Stu is a little bit more crazier, because, I mean, what is his reasoning?
I wanted to get into that with you, because obviously with Billy, it's revenge.
So wholeheartedly.
It's not like he was going on a huge killing spree and was going to do this forever. He wanted Maureen dead, and Sydney was acting a certain way with him, and that made him think of Maureen, I think, and so he wanted to kill her too. Now, obviously, they didn't have to kill everybody else, but like you said, they went into a horror movie. I just felt like Billy's part in it was more about revenge, whereas Stu just went off the deep end.
Yeah, no, he did. I mean, just especially when like when they're stabbing each other at the end, of the first one, and you're just like, I mean, that was hard to watch. It really was when they just start like trying to hide and cover it all.
And they're
they
psychopaths.
I know, but it was just like the fact that he's like, all right, stab me right here. Oh man, you went too deep, and it was just like like somebody that would be shooting basketball with their buddy, but these guys are stabbing each other, to cover up murders.
I think you got a little too deep. I think I'm dying here, man.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there like
woozy.
But, I definitely think that there's something to be said about the difference between Stu and Billy and their intentions, their motivations. Yeah. Do you think Billy actually felt anything for Sydney? Or was it just solely about killing her?
I think he just saw red the whole entire time. I don't think that he really was. He wanted to.
First of all, were they dating before Maureen died? Because remember, she had only died a year before these events took place. So had they been dating? How long had they been dating? Were they already dating when he decided to kill Maureen? Were they already dating when he decided to kill Sydney?
That's true. I mean, it just. I don't think he really, he was just on a revenge thing. You know what I mean? Like he didn't even act like he wanted to ruin her family as much as his family got ruined. Because I mean, the dad was just kind of.
They were going to frame him.
Yeah, they're going to frame him, and then with her, just basically they planned on killing her at the end. But the same thing with Billy's family was just all gone, pretty much, I mean, for the most part, is the dad and everything else like that, and it just ruined his family. So he wanted to do the same thing to hers. It wasn't so much against Sydney.
Why did he have so much anger towards her then? Why did he have so much anger towards Sydney? Like, I understand having anger towards Maureen, who had slept with his dad and everything like that, but then he killed her. Obviously, there's better ways to deal with your anger, but he killed with her. Now, why is he mad at Sydney?
Well, he's mad at Sydney because, Sydney basically is, not where he's at. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like, she kind of got over it. Yeah, her mom got murdered, and stuff like that, but she's kind of, okay, hey, I'm dealing with this. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like he never was able to deal with it.
Do you think there's any like sexual frustration there too? Because they say a lot of serial killers and psychopaths, they deal with sexual frustration and different things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. I think mainly Stu's had more. His ways were more masochistic than anything. Like he liked the pain. He liked the. It was probably something sexual for him about it when it came to killing. Where with Billy, I think it was just pure revenge, pure hatred towards that family, and he wanted to just totally destroy that family. And he felt that he needed to do that because what her mother did to to his family, he wanted to do to her family, basically. Yeah, to Sydney's family.
And Stu, he's just the great thing about it is he's so playful and affable. You wouldn't expect it from him. And Wes frames it that way. He shows you just how just like ADD this guy is. He's just like the way he goes off and
he had to. But Wes hiring him had to know that that's who Matthew Lillard is. I mean, everything he does.
Wasn't really popular before this.
13 Ghosts. He's really. ADD,
more that he's just like scared and freaked out the whole time. But yeah, I mean, in this one, it's like I don't know, he wasn't disturbed by anything that was going on. I mean, that's one of your warning signs.
He was playing a lot.
That some people were just like, "Oh, this is awful," but I mean, he was mainly just kind of being playful the entire time. Like he was having a blast.
Yeah, and so he was laughing at everything. Where like
when the ghost face ran down the hall and he's laughing and all that.
Billy's just kind of brooding the whole entire movie.
Well, not only that, whenever Sydney goes, "How do you gut someone?" and he he describes it. Stu describes it, and as soon as he does, it cuts to Billy, and Billy starts kind of perking up, and he gets up, kind of like, "Dude, shut up! What are you talking? You're telling people." You could see that Billy is obviously the brains, and he doesn't have a lot of patience for Stu.
Well, you can always tell, like, I think in a way you can almost tell. I mean, it's taken me a while to get to this point, I guess, but you can always tell who the killer is, and the simple fact that they're usually the only people that are not worried about anything. You know what I mean? Like those two characters weren't really worried about much of anything. You know what I mean? They were almost cocky to the point, you know, where it's like they felt like they have this planned out so well that they'll never get caught. So, you know, hey, we go to jail. That was part of the plan. You know, hey, we end up getting out of jail and we get framed somebody else for it. We frame Cotton for the mother's murder. You know, they thought they were so smart. But that's what's great about the character Sydney.
And it never shows them in an interaction with the killer by themselves.
No. And then but that's what's so great with Sydney's character is that no matter how smart you think you are and how planned out things, just like in the fourth film, you know, her niece thought she was so smart and that she had everything planned out, but
Sydney says, "I'm the OG.
Yeah,
okay, don't even try it
for real." And the fact that you know, it's like, no, okay, she's like you said before, she's a final girl. She's gonna end up at the end of the movie. I mean, it was almost like you could guess that Sydney's gonna be okay, Emma Roberts gonna go try to kill her, and then Sydney's gonna handle her business.
Yeah,
you know?
what I kind of liked about Sydney is she's more brave than stupid. You know, you have, you know, she just gets off the phone with her friend saying, you know, it's insulting, or no, she's talking to the killer at the time, you know, talking about how it's insulting because you have some big-breasted bimbo who's running up the stairs instead of out the front door, like they should be doing.
Yeah,
and it's insulting. And in the very next scene, she's running up the stairs and not out the front door.
Right.
But before that, you know, she's talking to him. And he's like, you know, I can see you, or I'm right outside your front door. And she goes, I call your bluff. And she unlocks the door and goes out there. So it's not like she's investigating a weird. I think she's just been through so much with her mom, and now that Casey's dead, you know, But
I mean, you see her beat up grown men. You know, I mean, she beats up some grown men. You know,
apparently,
and you know,
I think most of the times it's that she's being chased. It's Stu, and he's kind of a dummy, anyways. And,
well, you always see in horror movies like this, right, where, you know, like you said, it's the final girl or whatever, but. You know, it's the classic recipe of a horror movie. You know, I mean, you have the bad guy is 90% of the time a guy. Okay, well, in this case, it's about 50%, you know, in these movies, that it's a guy that's murdered, but it's always after the female, you know, where you know, Michael Myers is always after his little sister or whoever she happens to be, depending on who's writing that movie.
Right.
But, you know, and Freddy's after the female lead as well, you know. I mean, it's always the same formula. And what's great about Scream is that you don't know sometimes how they're going to go with it, because, I mean, you know, 2 movies it was guys, and then the other 2 it was girls, you know, and so you don't know who's going to be the murderer on this point, and you just kind of see some of the stuff where they're kind of, you know, how did that? All I'm saying is in the fourth one, just out of curiosity, how did that little girl take down 2 big cops? I mean, grown men cops.
And it did show you had to sneak out, but it could have been that other dude. Although no, he was at the barn.
Yes.
So it had to have been her.
Yeah, but
I mean, it had been Jill. But you know, I
could have tossed her with probably one hand.
Well, she snuck up on Adam Brody, and anybody can sneak up and get the drop on Adam Brody. It's Adam Brody. It's Seth Cohen, for God's sakes. You know, I'm not scared of Seth Cohen.
No.
I'd say Anthony Anderson. That's a different one. But I mean, he was kind of surprised. He was in the car and got a knife stuck in his forehead. Yeah. So I mean, what are you gonna do?
I mean, and the same thing with like Laurie Metcalf. You know, I'm like, well, I don't know if she can really. She's not super strong.
Yeah, but we'll get into it when we get into part 2. But I mean, I think that the majority of those kills, besides Randy, I'm pretty sure all the rest of them were Mickey. But before we get into that, just to kind of finish off the first movie, what's the best part, or I guess what's your favorite part about
right at the
part
end.
1?
Right at the end, where
mine is a person.
Well, mine's Randy. I mean, obviously, but but to the point was,
did you ever see yourself in Randy?
I did.
Being a movie buff,
I did. But I feel like he's only a horror movie buff.
But I mean, out of the 2 of us, you have watched way more horror movies than I have.
Right.
And you probably know a lot more about horror movies than I do.
Right. But no, it's my favorite scene was Randy at the end. You know, when they're watching the movie, you know, he's kind of explaining some of the rules. You know, and I just thought that was kind of cool because, you know, he's literally explaining like, what's happening in the story, in the movie kind of
like
thing.
no sex, no drugs or alcohol.
Never say I'll be right back.
Yeah, which is repeated many times throughout the series or whatever.
That's kind of like a catchphrase for the movies,
Well, who's more of a movie buff, do you think, Randy or Billy Loomis?
I'm going to say Randy wholeheartedly.
I think it's Billy Loomis. I think Randy has like kind of like the mainstream type stuff, like Halloween, The Shining, Exorcist, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, Billy comes up with some off the wall references. He's talking about Exorcist or Texas Chainsaw or whatever it is. And he's usually the one that's on the phone. Like I think Stu was on the phone a couple times, but usually it's Billy. And so I think he's the one with the trivia. He's the one like with the trick question they threw at Casey when they said, who was the killer in Friday the 13th? If she had said Mrs. Voorhees, he would have been like, no, I know it was Jason out of the whole series or whatever. So he's asking questions where there's no way she could get them right unless she clarifies before with another question. But I think it's been contested too that Billy Loomis is actually way more of a but he doesn't like brag about it. He's real low key because if people knew, they would kind of put that connection together. But I mean, even when he's talking to Sydney, he's like, I was watching The Exorcist. It was the made-for-TV version. It got me thinking, and But I mean, I don't know. I just think that maybe Billy Loomis is more of a movie expert, or at least a horror movie expert, because they had to do all that research to start their killings. Because remember, they watched tons of horror movies.
I think Billy and Randy are two different types of movie watchers. Okay, Billy's the type of person that can quote movie quotes. Where Randy looks at more of the production of. What we like to try to do on the show a little bit, where we're not just quoting scene for scene on a movie. We just like to look at
we're just having a conversation.
Why do you think the director does it this way, or if you notice, and I'm right there with him on that. That every single movie has an outline that it goes by. That it never veers from it, and people don't realize this when they're watching the movie because again they're just popcorn eaters. But when you really watch a movie, you notice that, hey, this plot line is a lot like this movie. Oh, wait, it's a lot like this one. It's a lot like this one. And they don't realize that, most movies use the same exact plot structure for their film that a lot of other directors use.
Yeah, I think the analogy you made was good, whereas I think Billy's more like us. And Randy is more like maybe other people, where they talk about like facts and movie facts about it. Whereas you and I will talk about these like they're real characters, real people and events. Like maybe a director did this for no reason, but we're like, well, why did they do that? What's the in-universe reason for why they did that?
And we do realize,
Billy maybe gets that mixed up too.
And we do realize, it might seem like, we really look in a lot. Way too deep into things and way too deep into movies and guaranteed probably 90% of the things that we are saying the director probably never thought about.
I don't think anybody would ever accuse me of going overboard on anything.
But I mean, just you see a lot of this happen with Star Wars, where a lot of tons of people like think George Lucas must have felt like this, where I guarantee you if you ask George Lucas, he'd be like, I don't know, I just wrote it down on paper.
But that's how I like to talk about movies. Because
no, I'm right there with you.
And it's like, you're like, well, there's no, but I get that, and maybe there was never meant to be an in-universe or in-movie explanation, but I want to be the one to be like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Why? What is the reason? Yeah. Okay, the director messed up here or there. Okay, well, let's figure out a reason for why it happened in the movie. Why do you think? That's the type of the stuff that, and maybe that's the way that Billy talks about it. But my favorite part about this movie is Matthew Lillard as Stu Macher. He is so zany, so funny, and so charismatic with the way he talks, walks, acts, and everything. I don't know if I would have liked this movie or if it would have been popular. I think he's kind of like the unsung hero because he doesn't have a lot of scenes, but you can be damn sure that he is in the spotlight of every scene that he's in because he's so magnetic. And the way he talks, and I don't know, it's just one of these actors, kind of like a Jim Carrey or somebody that they kind of go off. I mean, this is supposed to be a serious horror movie, and you have these certain character types. I think Stu kind of stands on the outside of that because you got Billy, you got your cool guy, brooding boyfriend, right? he's the tough guy, brooding guy, or whatever. And then you got Randy, who's the kind of the geek, the movie geek.
Yeah.
Stu, I don't feel like fills any roles. He's friends with the geek. He's friends with the broody guy and everything, and he's himself. He's just a jokester all the time and everything. Yeah. I just think I don't know. I think he makes this movie. He's my favorite part about this movie. I'd say Dewey is my favorite part and person of the entire series.
Yeah.
But in this movie, it's got to be Matthew Lillard as Stu. I think I honestly don't know if this movie would have worked for me if it hadn't been for Matthew Lillard.
You know why I think it does, though? Just the fact that he doesn't survive.
Why, contrary Mary?
He doesn't survive past the first movie.
Well, maybe, yeah. And then the fact that he's one of the killers and stuff, I was just like, that's a crazy reveal. I wouldn't. You look at this guy. There's no way he's just a jokester, affable guy. Right. How is he a psychopath?
Right. With you saying that, though, that just makes it sound like, what's the point of for you as a movie watcher to watch the last three then?
What do you mean?
What's the point to watch the last three if they don't have Matthew Lillard?
Well, no, I said that like Dewey is my favorite thing of the entire series, and he's really good. Dewey's really good in this first one. Yeah. It's just I was connected more to Stu and his craziness. Fast talking craziness. I don't know. I love Matthew Lillard in this movie. I think he's fantastic for the role, and I really liked that he got to play the part that comes in at the end as a complete surprise to everybody. Because, like I said, they were setting it up. Billy, if you didn't guess that it was Billy, then you're not paying attention. Even if it wasn't Billy, you should have at least guessed that it was Billy at least once.
And Skeet Ulrich in this movie, I don't think did a good job, to be honest with you. His acting wasn't. I mean, now Matthew Lillard. The reason is because Matthew Lillard, right at the end, especially when you found out he was one of the killers, that he really kind of took over that whole team, in a way. You know what I mean? Like Billy, there was just no depth to that character. There really wasn't any depth. I mean, he was just because
Billy was the brains,
right. But I think what it was because it was so focused on his revenge plot. Not throughout the movie, because obviously we didn't know who the killer was, but I think it was just so focused on the revenge plot, like he had no depth to his acting. I thought that's just my opinion. I
think Stu was enamored with Billy. I think that Billy just drew Stu in, and Stu wanted to be a part of his world and all that. I don't know what you say about that, but I think he was enamored with Billy, and Billy was kind of definitely the influencer. I think Skeet Ulrich. He's not.
We find out that neither of them were their influencers in the third one.
Well, yeah, exactly. And he's not really a tough guy. I've never seen him as a tough guy. I know he's
Skeet.
Yeah, and I know he's been in Riverdale and Jericho.
I always consider him like the poor man's Johnny Depp
or something.
Know what I mean?
But I mean, he's like the leader of a biker gang in Riverdale, and I'm just like, I don't think so.
He looks so old in that.
No,
too.
his role in As Good as It Gets with Jack Nicholson is more in line with kind of. Where he's kind of an artsy guy, or whatever. He's got no bulk. He's not like a tall, intimidating guy or anything. He's just a guy. And you have to have an average person because somebody would stand out in the Ghostface suit. So you got to have somewhat of an average person. So I get that. But I don't know. I just never really saw him as like a tough guy. Some of the later ones, like maybe Roman, that made more sense.
He was the only one that I felt like that really filled out that costume enough to make it.
Mickey was pretty good though too, and maybe Stu, maybe Matthew Lillard in because he was a taller guy.
Yeah,
and that's what confuses me about that is like Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard's like at least 6 inches taller than him, right?
Difference.
So they had to have looked differently in the suits, but
same thing with Emma Roberts. I mean, even Macaulay Culkin's one of his brothers. That's what I call him,
Rory Culkin.
Yeah, I mean, it's
not Kieran Culkin.
Yeah, but it's unmistakably. Yeah. You can never deny who happens to be a Culkin.
And I don't think it's the one from Signs. I can't remember which one. But there's so many Culkins.
If you notice, both those characters, like Emma Roberts, they were not tall people. They weren't a big people. I mean, those. The Macaulay Culkin family clan or whatever, they're not a big tall people, and Emma Roberts is a very short person, so it's kind of funny to see those two people and they both come from dynasties, what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that
family dynasties or whatever,
like their siblings and their aunt and uncle and their father happens to be a lot more famous than they ever have been. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny to see both those characters in there. And you know, Emma Roberts does these scream type movies.
For now.
Well, I'm just throwing this out there, but you know, it's just kind of hard because 2 is really the only thing that's really.
No, I know. I just have a couple things I want to say for 1 real quick.
Okay.
I like how they showed how giddy Stu was about the party. I want to know the logistics of it. But before we get into that, let's have that be the last thing we talk about. One question I have: how is Billy going to explain the corn syrup? So their plan was to stab each other and to act like victims, but then somebody probably would have found out that he had corn syrup all over him, don't you think? Or do you think he would have just been washed and cleaned off and they would have assumed it was blood?
Well, no.
I would think that forensics would want to take blood, like all different blood
obviously.
Samples and everything,
to try to find any
whose
kind of
blood
DNA
is who,
or, you know.
DNA. What?
Well, unless he was just considering, you know, I mean, again, he's 17-year-old kid at most, right?
One of these things you have to look over.
Yeah. Well, no, they don't look 17, but they're 17-year-old kids. I mean, they're in high school still, right?
Right.
So
they're movie 17.
Yeah, even though Dewey looks just about the same age as they are. So
well, and he's supposed to be 25 in the first movie.
Yeah. Well, and then Gail too. I mean, they all look pretty young.
A couple years older or something. But I don't know. Maybe the corn syrup thing. Maybe that's something that you have to look past. Because when he was like corn syrup, I'm like looking at him. I'm like, you know, if this is successful, how would he explain that? Like, if somebody happened to take samples, be like, why do you have corn syrup on you? Like, how would you explain that?
It's just, again, you know, and they try to do that in all these movies where they're like, this is how we're going to explain your murder, basically. You know, let me go ahead and tell you all this, you know, and it's like, yeah, there's going to be plot holes, but you got to understand that, you know, it is a movie and they are humans. So, you know, more than likely they'll make a mistake because most times you can't get away with stuff like that just like it's nothing, you know?
Yeah, that's true, except for, who was it? The unsolved murders. Well, there's Jack the Ripper. That's still unsolved.
No, they got his DNA. They said it was like a baron or something.
I don't know.
They got his DNA.
Well, that's not what Spider-Man said.
Well,
no, I'm just kidding. But there's one that still. Oh, the Zodiac. That still hasn't been solved. They have suspicions.
They said it's Ted Cruz.
Well, they have suspicions of who it was. But yeah, the Zodiac.
Or no, his dad, I think.
The Zodiac thing has never been. They've never been caught. I liked whenever he was checking the closet when he was looking for Sydney after she got away, and then there was a point in Halloween where where Michael Myers was about to like break into the closet, and he's looking into a closet. It kind of mirrored that. Yeah. But the fact that he's so obsessed with horror movies, he's trying to find her before she gives away the whole farm, right?
Yeah.
And he cannot take his eyes off of that movie. He's looking in the closet and he has to look over, and it's like he knows the TV's there. He can ignore it, but he has to look at that scene, and that's when she stabs him with the umbrella.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's really cool because there's a few times like when Dewey's going through the house looking for where you have the down, 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 you know, the music from Halloween that's playing on the TV. Yeah. And it's like this suspenseful music. So they're kind of using Halloween's music, but they can justify it by saying, well, it's on the TV, you know. Yeah. So it's using that to build up the suspense. I really like that. And then another thing I wanted to say was TVs were very dangerous back then.
Yeah.
The way Stu dies is awesome. Our final girl, Sydney, pushes a TV onto his head. If I pushed a TV onto your head nowadays, you'd just say, ow. Or what the heck, man? Yeah, well, even if I picked one up and smashed it over your head, you'd probably go to the hospital with a neck injury or something. Yeah. But these glass tube TVs, these old school TVs, man, they were. And I want to say, look, that doesn't mean he's dead. I mean, he could have bled out from when Stu, but I mean, maybe he's still alive. Maybe they'll bring him back. I doubt it.
Doubt it. I mean, I don't know why he would just show up like 25 years later. You know, it's like. I don't think so. He's like, oh, look, I've come with Freddie Prinze Jr.
With Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yeah.
I really like that end scene with this at the party. Did you know it was like over 40 minutes long, the third act?
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because you have the first act, which is basically the intro and introducing Sydney and everything. And then you have the middle act, which kind of, it doesn't really drag, but it kind of drags a bit. But once we get into this party, I just think it's so interesting, but so complicated with if you're the two killers, like how everything moved around. Do you think when Billy got fake stabbed, do you think he stayed in that room the entire time until he came down the stairs when Sidney saw him afterwards? Or do you think after she left the room, he went and helped?
No, I think they're a bunch of monkeys because, they're a bunch of monkeys. They crawl out the window and they probably drop down, if I had to guess.
So you think that Billy was, because remember, we saw Billy get fake stabbed. He dropped on the floor. She ran out of the room. And then it was basically, you assume, Stu was chasing her the entire time. So, whoever the killer was chasing her the entire time, and Billy just bided his time waiting there, fake dead or whatever. Or did he go and help a couple times? Because remember, there was sometimes where the killer was closer to the house, and then sometimes where the killer was closer to like Gail and them on the road and all that kind of stuff. So I wonder if Billy helped and then snuck back up into that room, took off the costume, and then came down like he was just barely alive.
You got to kind of think on some of these things, especially with horror movies and stuff like that, where it's like, you want to say, how come we never figured out the fact that how could they be at all these different places so quickly at different times and all this other stuff? And then you got to think back, you got to look at, movies like Jason and Freddy, where Jason literally never ran. I mean, the guy walked everywhere, but always caught up to him.
And they tried to actually explain that in the reboot, that 2009 or whatever it was reboot, because remember he had all those tunnels underneath.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, that explains. That explains how he's getting around and then popping up out of nowhere.
But how does he? Does he got a map with him that he takes?
It doesn't
with
explain
him,
how he gets to somewhere so fast, but it does explain how he disappears and then just appears somewhere else.
Right, and that's where you can watch the Scream movies and be like, okay, that can justify that, this and that, but at the same time you got to think, you're like, okay, there's got to be two killers here, you know what I mean? And that's what I thought with all the movies were going to be like, and then I get to that third one and I'm just like, nope, just one killer. But it's just, it's kind of another thing too, is like you were saying, there's hardly any movies out there that there's two killers, in the
or at
movie.
least when it proposes that there's a killer and it ends up being two.
Yeah, and it was good. I thought that it was beautifully written. The characters for the killers, they were great. I say great like it's a good thing, but they did that role very well.
Yeah,
and
talking about the film itself,
yeah, that was excellent. And Neve Campbell this is her role. This is her role for the rest of her life. Kind of like Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis did a lot of other movies.
She did,
but really most people know her from Halloween.
She's done like Trading Places, True Lies.
Which are great movies too. But she's the girl from Halloween. Right. There's a lot of different characters that are
Sigourney Weaver is either known as Ripley or the girl from Ghostbusters,
and
Dana.
Yeah, and Christensen's known for being Batman. You know what I mean? It's really not much other
and
that
Hayden Christensen is known as Ant.
But it's just kind of one of those things where like Neve Campbell did a great job. I think the only plot
Drew Barrymore is Drew Barrymore, but Neve Campbell will always be Sidney Prescott.
Right, exactly.
A huge majority.
Absolutely,
of people out there.
Yeah, but the biggest plot hole in the entire movie and the worst scene in the entire movie.
This is in part one?
Yes.
Okay.
And even when I was, 96, I think I was 16 then, but in 96, I thought this was ridiculous. But Rose McGowan dying from the damn garage. Come on now.
Okay, so I had this written down too. The makers of Scream, and maybe it's Wes Craven himself, I don't think he understands the mechanics of a
that's what I'm saying.
Because in part 4,
yes,
there's somebody crawling out, and he waits until she gets halfway under it, and then he presses the button, and it like smushes down on her back. Whereas a normal garage door opener, first of all, it wouldn't have been able to come down because she's laying in front of the sensor.
And it wouldn't have worked because it was on a movie set.
Right. Well, it was I don't know. It was oh wait, what are you talking about?
Remember the garage? Remember wasn't it on the movie set on one of the garage?
No. See, in part 1, it was Tatum who was killed by a real garage opener. Uh-huh. In part 4, it was the first. Wasn't it? It was the first person that he got her to stop by having the garage door come down, hit her in the back. It didn't crush her or cut her in half.
Broke
or anything,
her back or something.
But you heard this sound, which is like, okay, I don't think it would have done that.
No.
But that being said as well, it wouldn't even come down in the first place because those things have sensors at the bottom.
Thank you.
Which won't do anything if the garage door is going up. But if it's going down and those sensors get tripped, that garage door is going back up again. It will not come down.
And they make those garage doors So on purpose, they make it like this because if you do have a dog door like they did, they make it on purpose that it won't. If you try to grab on it at all, it won't try to open anymore. It literally, if there's any resistance at all, on purpose, because if a little dog gets stuck in that dog door and something like that actually happens and it's able to lift it up, they don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
So there's nowhere in God's green earth that would have worked.
Yep.
And not only lifted probably 60 pound girl.
There you go. That's why she's probably 120.
Yeah, but regardless.
But yeah,
wouldn't have lifted her up there and killed her. Come on now,
that. Yeah, and the fact that her body her neck gets snapped as it's pulling her in. It's like the garage door opener does not have that much torque. What does it got? How many horsepower? It's like 12 horsepower. A third of a horse or something like that. I don't know. It's ridiculous. And then in part 4 when and I was like, oh, they better not chop her or break her back, and it didn't. It just stopped her. But the sound that it made, it was much
There's
more
safety measures on everything of this. Just like what they do with an elevator, right? Where that elevator is going to chop you in half if you don't get through the doors. Literally, the elevator will not move if those doors are open.
Yeah,
okay?
I think everybody...
Even a little bit.
Yeah, and I think everybody agrees that the most ridiculous kill of any of the Scream movies was the garage door kill. Because now, it's very iconic, the scene with... And I love Rose McGowan's character in that because she was like the one before Sydney that really tried to fight back.
Yeah.
And she was kicking his butt for a while. And I'm pretty sure that was Billy, too. Not just Goofy Stu. Because remember, right after it happened,
how do they not have bruises on their
faces? He kind of came around and popped up
stuff,
like, hey, how's it going? And he kind of gave Stu a look like, yeah, I got her.
You wear a stupid mask and you think it's not going to cause you not to have bruises on your face and stuff like that. I mean...
But... Now, that being said, that happened to Mickey in the second one, which we're about to get into.
Yeah.
And when he pulled it off, he had a big bruise from the car wreck. And in the movie Scream, so Stu ran after Neve Campbell, or ran after Sydney. I believe it was Stu in the suit. I don't think it was Billy. Because I know Billy came up to her window right afterwards, but... The ghost face disappeared real quick. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I think it was Stu because remember he got into a fight with her. She hit him in the head. And the next day they were at school and she was talking with Tatum. And Stu was kind of behind. He was using Tatum's mirror and he was looking at his head to see if he had like a bruise or something. And it's one of those kind of cool little things that you look at.
You don't realize until after
you
the
don't
movie.
Realize, or maybe on a different watching. Because I was watching it and I was like, wait a minute. I was like, is he maybe looking to see if... Because now you're watching it with the knowledge that they're part of it or whatever. So, anyways, great ending. Dewey survived somehow. He got stabbed in the back.
Randy survived too.
Yeah, apparently Dewey survived though. But it hit his part of his spine that controlled his leg, so he's got a limp now.
I thought it was kind of silly too, though.
It was weird, and he doesn't have the limp anymore.
Well, that's probably how they explained him to stop, where he stops being a cop there for a little bit because of his injury. Maybe he had that's probably the part of the plot or something.
He had kind of like a claw hand, like his fingers wouldn't sit right, and he'd have his arm to his side and he'd limp. But he didn't have that in part 4.
Yeah.
And did he have that in part 3? I don't think he did.
He didn't.
Maybe he had a little bit of it here and there where he'd keep his hand up, a slight limp or whatever. But I'm pretty sure he didn't have it after or whatever. But anyway, so the main people that made it out of this one alive are Randy, Sydney.
Wait, Randy, I'm gonna right when you say I'm gonna tell them what they are. Okay, Randy's the fourth wall breaker.
So you got the fourth wall breaker. You got
the always chased,
in Sydney. You got the hero,
the savior,
Dewey.
Because he's not really a hero, in hero senses in a way. It's just he does his job because it's his friend. You know what I mean? It wouldn't.
Yeah, and Gail described him right. She said, "You're a brave man, Dewey Riley," in part 3, at the end. So he doesn't save people. He saved Sydney in the very last one. I'm sorry, not the very
no, he always ends up getting knocked out. Remember, every single movie.
In the first one, he got stabbed.
But he's like right before he saves Sydney. In the fourth one he gets knocked out by a bedpan, and then the third one he
does save her. He shoots Roman in the head. Right. He's actually the one that gets
in the head.
Dewey head what dead. And he goes, oh, okay. And then he turns around and shoots him point blank in the middle of the forehead. Yet in part 4, whenever the killer's attacking the Gale, he shoots at him and hits a light that's like 18 feet away. And I'm like, what happened to the headshot that he had in the last movie?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway,
well, maybe it's adrenaline or something, you know.
But yeah, I think the part 3 is the only one where he actually comes in. But by that point, she had already kind of stabbed him, and he was down on the ground, and Dewey just kind of got the shots and got the final shot.
Yeah.
But he is brave though, for as dorky and not as tough as he is, and I mean Dewey and David Arquette in real life.
Yeah, I know.
He is at least brave, and he'll run into the action.
Especially when it comes to Gale and Sydney, you know
right?
What I mean?
He protects those because
especially Sydney is like his new sister, like his sister because
his sister died and everything, and that was his sister's best friend. So yeah, he sees Sydney as a sister, and Gale, of course, is the person that he loves. And
Gale happens to be, and she also survived. She happens to be the one that always needs redemption because she's always messing up one thing or another, and she's always getting forgiven, and she needs to do good and save them here and save them there. But then she ends up being scummy again.
All her success is off camera, right?
Yeah.
So she became somewhat popular because of Maureen's trial and everything.
Yeah.
So at the beginning in the first movie, she's had some success, but it had already happened, and she's looking for her next big break, which happens to be the same case that she doesn't know. After the first one, she wrote these books, the Woodsboro Murders, which the Stab movie was based off of.
Yeah.
So she had success there, but then when we meet her, she's kind of looking for her next big break again. In the third movie, she's looking for her next. In the fourth movie, she's not doing anything, looking for another break. So she's always having these successes off camera, and then when we meet her again, she's so full of herself and is like, "Why am I not famous anymore? I have to write this new story. I have to be part of this investigation." And so she has a real crappy attitude about it, and she's always, like you said, needing that redemption of being that person. It seems like she has a very little character development because she becomes a good person at the end of one movie, and at the beginning of the next one, she's a jackass
scummy.
again.
She's scummy, yeah.
And especially to Dewey, she's always treating him really good at the end of the movies because he's usually stabbed or
she
whatever.
knows that she's getting that draw to kind of settle down and basically live the rest of her life in Woodsboro. She's fighting it, but this is where her success came from. This town is where her success came from. This is why people know her name, is because of this town. And it's like she keeps fighting it and not wanting, up until the fourth film where she finally kind of we find out that she is given in, by the end of the third film, but finally given in and lives in Woodsboro, and she's really not doing anything.
And she has a generic crappy hairstyle. In first, second, and third,
happened?
She had unique hairstyles, and in the fourth one, she just has a generic hairstyle. I will say though, part 3, she looked
my goodness.
terrible.
It's like somebody took a weed whacker to her bangs.
It's so fun. I was watching it with your daughter last night. We were watching part 3. And we said that. I was like, look at her hair. And your daughter was like, oh, my God, her bangs are terrible. And I'm like, it looks like somebody took a weed whacker to
her bangs, yes.
It's exactly what it looks like. I don't know if that was the fashion back then. But, and I don't know if that's
ever the fashion.
I don't notice people's clothing or hairstyles in movies or whatever. But I was just like, oh, gosh, she looked terrible.
It was horrible.
I think the best she looked was a little bit of red in her hair in part 2.
Yeah,
which we can get into now. Did you notice that what they were going to make part 2 be about was that it kind of fell off halfway through the movie? Like it started out where there was copycat, right? So the Phil and Maureen.
Well, if you notice, because they had to they got rid of Stu and Billy, right? Mm-hmm. In the first one, so they needed to move some more characters to the center. And the way I think Williamson and Craven created these films was not to continuously add new characters to the show, so you have your basic characters, throughout all 4 films, right? So, once you get rid of Stu and Billy, you got to move some more characters to the middle of the group, you know what I mean? And the problem is who do you got left? You've got Billy. I mean, not Billy, excuse me. Randy, and you've got...
you're talking about for the core cast.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking about like those
Sydney.
first 2 that got killed, played by Omar Epps.
Yeah.
And...
she got killed in the movie theater.
What's her name? Jada Pinkett.
Yeah. Was it? Yeah,
I don't know if she was Jada Pinkett Smith in this yet, or if she was just Jada Pinkett. But Yeah, so you got those two, and they were named Phil and Maureen.
Yeah.
You know, her name was Maureen after Maureen. So it felt like they were trying to do a little copycat type thing, and then it just kind of fell off. Some people said that they just decided to change MOs or whatever. But then they did the same thing kind of in the third one, where she started leaving pictures. They started leaving pictures of Maureen at the scene.
But it's more
whatever.
like a basic, like okay, so the first one was high school.
Right.
The second one was college. Mm-hmm. The third one, they went, which a lot of scary movies do this, where they do the movie inside of the movie situation.
Adult life career. Part 4 would be midlife crisis. Hopefully, part 5 we're getting his retirement.
Well, no. Usually in like part 4, what they did is they're basically trying to pass that torch. But then they probably had like focus groups watch this and said, nah, this ain't gonna work again. Just stop it now.
Yeah.
But again, people like to reboot horror movies. It's a thing. It's just a constant thing where people are just
like in Star Wars, they tried to pass the torch, and it's like, you need to let the if you're gonna pass the torch, that doesn't mean you have to kill off people. The guy who played the voice of Darth Maul, Sam Witwer, he also played Doomsday in Smallville.
Yeah.
He talked about how he thought that that Rian Johnson and Disney there had gotten it wrong with The Last Jedi, because just because you want the new audience to take over doesn't mean you have to. He didn't like that they killed off Han Solo and Luke Skywalker, because just because you're handing the torch off doesn't mean you have to kill off characters.
Yeah. Well, I kind of feel like they were just like, okay, after this fourth one, it was kind of one of those cool things. You're like, oh, okay, it's all right, and then Halloween H2O, okay, I can handle that one, but don't make any more. I mean, as long as you brought back Jamie Lee Curtis, okay, I'm okay with that. With doing Halloween H2O or whatever, I was okay with that. At first,
and then Resurrection happened,
and then
and they killed Jamie Lee Curtis off in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, and then they brought her back in these other ones. So whatever. But just like there are some Halloween movies out there that they disregard part of canon. Like the one where...
this new one that they came out with, it's disregarded all canon past part 1.
Well, just like the same thing with Chucky, too. The newest Chucky one went past canon, too.
Because the original Halloween, it was just a stalker who had killed his sister and now came back to kill other people.
Yeah.
It wasn't until part 2 that you find out that they're actually brother and sister. And then the original went back and said, no, we're even cutting out this part 2. This new one that came out in 2018 was like, no, and that was
and please please stop letting Rob Zombie do these films.
Well, I know, but then Eastbound and Down came out and was like, well, the reason we wanted to do that was because if it's familial and he's a brother, then it's not as scary. It's not as scary as somebody who will just kill you because he wants to kill you. Yeah. So we made it to he's not the brother, but he's still after her because she's the one that got away type of thing. So I don't know. With this new one, I think because they did Maureen and Phil, and then Cece, her real name was Casey. Buffy, what's her name? Sarah Michelle Gellar. Yeah. So her name was Cece in the college, but her real name was Casey, as in Casey Becker. So they were like trying to kill them in the order that they died or whatever. So and then that just kind of fell off.
But then if you notice, because Laurie Metcalf's character, who
plays Debbie Loomis or something Loomis.
Yeah,
she plays Debbie Salt.
So you kind of see in her character, she's got the mentality Billy did. Okay, she's out for revenge like Billy. She's also obviously a critical thinker like Billy was too.
Thinker.
But you know what I'm saying? Like she planned out a lot of this. You know what I mean? But then again, her curse was she was just laser focused on revenge, where what's his face was just kind of out there. Kind of like a Stu type character, you know what I mean? Yeah, Mickey was kind of like a Stu type character, where he was just kind of, again, he was the crazy one.
Yeah.
Like Stu was the crazy one. He obviously was the crazy one because he's out for that. Laurie Metcalf's character was out for revenge. Against Sydney,
and you can really tell that this is one of Timothy Oliphant's earlier roles, because when he's all right with the whole movie, but when he takes off the mask and shows that he's a killer, and the way he just kind of goes all ham on it, it's just like he starts going crazy and talking crazy. I was just like, oh, it's just terrible acting.
Yeah.
I didn't like Debbie because when it's shown that she's the killer, she looks really timid. she does not look like a mastermind of these murders. She looks a very timid, where Cotton's trying to make a deal with her, and she's like, oh yeah, like real wide-eyed, like she doesn't know what the hell is going on.
But she plays that type of timid role in a lot of films that
I
she
know,
does.
but that's
like,
what I'm
except
saying,
for Big
is
Bang Theory is the only time that she's really
right, and
sure
that's
of herself,
okay to play that timid role to where she doesn't know what's going on as her mask, as the Debbie Salt person, so people don't suspect it. That's one thing, but to then expose yourself as the killer. It was good for a little bit, but then she seemed a lot less confident. Didn't seem like the mastermind. But a lot of that had to do with, I think she just wanted the revenge, because I don't think she was in the suit much. I think the only time she was actually in costume to kill somebody was with Randy.
Yeah.
Obviously, she was. No, she did go after. I think she was the one that stabbed Dewey as well, and was after Dewey and Gale, because Mickey's character was with Sydney's character and her friend and the cops. Remember, they got in that car wreck and all that while Debbie was chasing these other people. But I mean, mainly it was Mickey doing most of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
When it comes to that. But yeah, I mean, that movie just ended up being a revenge plot because they killed Billy, because Billy was a psychopath. And Mickey wanted to go to trial, and then that was all blown away. I just look at this, and I think Timothy Olyphant even goes back on saying, he's like, I did not like that role. I didn't like, the role that I played in there.
But again, if you notice, I don't think that was his say on how that role was supposed to be and how that character was supposed to be. They were literally trying to repeat the formula. They only changed a couple things. For one, Laurie Metcalf is the Billy. I feel like
it
he's
felt
Billy
like he was trying to be Stu.
Yeah,
he was trying to do that nutso craziness that Matthew Lillard does.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've seen Timothy Olyphant, he's a very chilled and laid back dude. He's really close to his Raylan character, where he just kind of whatever. He's not that wild and crazy. Whereas Matthew Lillard, he's got that energy. Yeah. He's got that wild and crazy, shaggy energy. Yeah. So yeah, I felt like they were trying to. You got the revenge thing with Mrs. Loomis, and you got Timothy Olyphant trying to be Matthew Lillard, or should I say Mickey trying to be Stu? Yeah, and it just didn't work.
I mean, it's. I'm not saying it was bad movie. It just was very predictable, and I mean, not predictable, obviously, in The Killer, because there was really no way of thinking. Okay, you did know something was up with Laurie Metcalf's character, because you were like, she's in this a lot. So who is she really? So it was kind of, I felt like those two characters could have been the killer. I remember watching this a long time ago, and it's very hard to watch it now because I know who the killers are, and so I'm trying to talk about it now, but it's not like talking about it when I first watched it.
Yeah.
But I kind of felt like I knew who the killers were almost right off the bat. And I was predicting, saying there's probably two killers.
Maybe. I would have never predicted that Laurie Metcalf. I mean, yeah, she's
there's
good
something
red
up with that, though.
She is, but I mean, if I was thinking realistically, who was in that suit tossing people off of balconies and through windows and stuff, and I'm like, I wouldn't have envisioned this 5'4" woman.
Like you could see Cotton doing it, or even Randy to a point, I mean,
maybe, but it just seemed like I could probably see Mickey doing it. He seemed kind of like a jock a little bit, but I don't know. It was very. I think the first one was a revolutionary horror movie, thriller movie that happened to have teens in it.
Yeah,
and I think part 2 was a teen movie.
Yeah.
It was a teen movie that happened to be a horror movie, because you have the typical college kids doing their college things. So whereas the first movie was about the horror, the suspense, the story, it was a good, iconic horror movie. Part 2 was a teen movie it was more so, it was a teen movie first.
Yeah.
And a college movie, a Van Wilder type thing. But
yeah, and I don't think we really need to talk that much about the second one, just because there was not a lot of substance in it. Now, my favorite part was just the Randy parts again, with him explaining horror movies again, like sequels, you know what I mean? And then what was great with the third one too is that he was still in that one technically, talking about the three-peat or the
trilogy.
The trilogy.
Yeah.
Where I thought that way his explaining it, again, it was a form of breaking that fourth wall, explaining to the audience that's actually watching the movie
right.
of them in that movie, how things are supposed to be done. You know, you don't say certain things because obviously they get you killed. Like, I'll be right back. Anthony Edwards literally said that, and he got murdered for it, you know.
Anthony Anderson.
What?
Anthony Edwards was Goose in
Yes,
Top
that's
Gun.
right. That's right. Horrible movie.
I'm like, he died of brain cancer in ER, but whatever. Spoiler alert. No, yeah, I think second one was the only one off because 1 and 3 are part of the main legacy storyline, right?
Yeah.
Part 4 is even part of the main legacy storyline.
Yeah.
Part 2 was just a one-off. It had nothing to do with Roman or anything like that. It had to do with
Do you know why that
Mrs. Loomis getting her revenge.
You know why I think that was? And they were able to kind of pull it off in the third one, right? Because they did go to Woodsboro in the third one. But they brought
It was because Kevin Williamson didn't write part 3?
Well, I don't know. It's my favorite movie out of all of them anyways. But no, I mean, if you notice that the one movie that they're not really in Woodsboro, because we talk about this again, you know, many times on the show that you know, the scenery and the, you know, the places they're at
As a character.
is a character in itself. And just like I think we were having this conversation before, was that, you know, Woodsboro is a character in the show, in the movies. I mean, it really is.
The first and the last one.
The first, last one, but the third one they do go back. They do go back to or no, the Woodsboro is in Hollywood.
I see what you're saying.
You
You
see
know, the
what I'm saying?
Woodsboro sets.
Right. Where the second one really wasn't in Woodsboro. You know what I mean? It was kind of taken away from that town.
The third one is it's unique, but like I get people's problems with it. I think I liked it because the opening was fantastic. Like a lot of maybe people like the theater opening in part 2, and I was like, oh, that's all right. But it just felt like it was trying to match up to the first one, right?
Yeah. It was a very chaotic scene on that.
I like the third one because, as unrealistic as it is, because you have a voice changer that has all their voices. We don't even have that. It's 2020 right now, and we still don't even have that now.
In all reality,
I
no.
can't. And first of all, I would imagine you'd need like a bunch of sound clips of people saying certain verbs,
Certain words,
and consonants
yeah.
to be able to program a computer voice. So where do you get those clips from? And second of all, that was what, 1999 that came out.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think so. So there's a lot more suspending disbelief. Obviously, you got to suspend disbelief with pretty much any movie you're going to watch. But there are varying levels of that. And this one is you have to really suspend your disbelief on the voice changer. I thought it was unique.
Yeah, I mean,
because you have somebody else's voice and everything, and then it switches, and it's pretty heart pounding with Cotton trying to get home.
Yeah.
And Cotton is played by Liev Schreiber, who's this
great actor.
Yeah, and he wasn't as big back then, but
No.
I mean, like right now, you'd see him now. He's a big, tall, jacked guy.
Yeah.
And somebody you wouldn't want to mess with and everything like that. But even back then, he was a pretty tall, big guy.
Yeah.
And I think he even, like, when you saw him against the killer was like a few inches shorter than him. And he kind of grabbed his hand and slammed him up against the thing like he could manhandle this guy. So I was just like, ooh,
then you get somebody like Neve Campbell, who is throwing grown men, you know, twice her size around the room and doing karate chops and this and that.
She's
you know?
great at throwing stuff.
She does.
She's a good scrapper.
She is. I mean, and it's funny because
She's had 4 movies to prove it.
Yeah, and she, you know, she's not like had any kind of training whatsoever, you know, and all this other stuff. I just think like in the third one, you know, it's not so much, if you notice, like the further it goes on, it's not so much surrounded about Sydney. I mean, it is, everybody's always after Sydney, always, you know, killing Sydney's, but you know, what makes these movies great, and especially the third one, is that it really you start getting into like Gail and Dewey's relationship, which I'm saying is the most annoying thing about the whole of the movies, their actual relationship.
You don't like their relationship?
I don't.
Do you think it's unrealistic she would be with him? Because he's kind of a nerd?
No, because he saved her. He saved her life on more than one occasion.
Okay, but do you think she would normally go for somebody like? Well, obviously she wouldn't normally go.
Yeah, if he had never saved her life, then yes. Or then no. Then I can't see them ever getting together. But the fact that he saved her life, you know, it's one of those things where I'm sure there's some.
But there's a lot of
psychological
storytelling where things like that happen.
Yeah, but that's. I mean, we also know that's storytelling. That does not happen in real life. I mean,
maybe not. Yeah, you never know. There's the rare case when somebody's brought together with somebody else who saved them that they would normally never be in a relationship with. But I mean, that's good storytelling right there.
And the third one, that's kind of what I liked on the third one. I mean, they were just kind of sour on each other.
Would Leonard or would Penny ever be with somebody like Leonard?
Not. Never.
But it's the experiences that they've shared over a few years. Which gives them which is what I hate about Chuck.
And giving her a snowflake. Come on now.
That's from that's beyond. But that's why I didn't like about Chuck is like you could say that they can re-fall in love with each other, but it was the experiences they had for 9 seasons or however long it was. Anyways, we're gonna get into Chuck. I don't want to get into Chuck.
But I thought the best part, it really stops after the first one. And somewhat on the second one, after the second one kind of, but like the third and fourth one, it starts not being so much about Sydney. It just starts being about more of the characters that are around her. Like with the third one, it's a lot
the killer.
Yeah, the killer, and like the third one is a lot more to do with Dewey and it
was more about Maureen.
Yeah,
and
but
investigating
Maureen, right. But it wasn't fully surrounded. I mean, everybody ends up just wanting to get to Sydney. Yeah, they want to get to Sydney. That's just how everything ends up going, and I realize that, But in the long run, in the third one, it's just the way that it's unique because it was, like you said, wasn't directed by Williamson.
And they brought it there. You mean Wes Craven?
Yeah.
You mean it wasn't written by Kevin Williamson? Yeah. Yeah, and they brought in McDreamy, tried to put some emphasis on him, tried to make him. As soon as they brought him in. I thought
it at first. I
didn't. As soon as they brought him in and I saw what they were trying to do, I was like, he's definitely not the killer.
Yeah, you finally realize he's just kind of an idiot, really. I mean, he really doesn't solve any. If you notice, he does not solve anything or does anything.
Yeah, and not only that, but they lay it on so thick.
Yeah.
With the whole, he's like, I just the only thing I know about horror movies is in the trilogies is in the third one.
Yeah.
Slow pause.
I know.
He looks up to her creepily.
I know.
Anything goes.
I know.
It's just like, okay, really.
And I felt in this third one, that they really tried to like throw in every single name and every single character into the hat on who the killer could be. Where the first two was kind of like, okay, well, it can only be one of these characters.
Well, what I
second
did
one,
like
one
that,
of these
though.
characters. Yeah, no, I did too. I'm not saying I disliked it.
I thought it was interesting that okay, how are we gonna? Because each movie you have to think, okay, how are we gonna keep them guessing? How are we not gonna? So okay, this is obviously the person, or if it's not, like, how is it this other person?
Yeah,
I think that they have to come up with a new way to do that, a fresh way to do that every movie. And I think in the third movie they did a pretty good job, basing it off of. I mean, they
even made you think it was Sydney there for a second.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, as you know, in Hollywood, scripts get changed all the time.
Yep.
And as we found out from the last Star Wars movie, they, she didn't even know it was Palpatine was going to be her grandfather or whatever. Halfway through the movie, they still weren't sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, scripts change so much that it was an interesting, like, well, who's going to die? And there's 3 different versions of the scripts, and in each version, 3 different people are next to die.
Yeah.
So you have all
the same people die in every single script. The original people that already have died all the exact same order, except for then it was Gale was going to die next or whoever else was going to die next, but they were able to figure out which script it was by who was going to actually die at that point, but. Like you thought it was maybe the old man, the producer, or even for a split second, maybe it might be Sydney, or it might be, one of the main characters that they're just throwing us like a super crazy loop for. But, I love that movie. I thought the third one was the greatest one. Now bringing in Jay and Silent Bob was kind of just really random.
Oh, yeah. And they were in the same scene as Wes Craven and his director of photography, his DP.
Yeah.
Both them were in that same scene with Jay and Silent. They were right behind Jay and Silent Bob. You could see them. But
you really can't get any more random than that.
It's stupid. I don't know if that was
I thought it was funny, but it was still random.
I don't know if that was a studio decision. I don't think it was, because Wes Craven was actually in the scene. But I don't know. Maybe they felt that they needed more Hollywood, and at that time, Jay and Silent Bob were popular. Whatever. It was stupid. I wish that we could have just a certain cut that will cut that out, but but this third movie,
the non-Jay and Silent Bob cut,
exactly. What I like about these movies is that they have a rewatchability where if you go back, you can see the clues that they're throwing at you. You know, in the first one, it was completely obvious. I mean, They were telling you the entire time that Billy was the killer, but that was because at that time nobody knew that there would be a second killer because it was the first time it was done. So Stu was the surprise, even though they still tried to throw you off of Billy and then throw you back onto Billy. You know, the whole, you know, don't fear the Reaper when she's making out with him, and him doing the talking about the scary movies, and he's always doing film references and everything. So I mean, there's that. Part 3, you know, you have these different the script changes. So there was heavy on, well, who's going to die in the script versus who's going to die in the movie. So there's heavy, you know, clues that, okay, the director of the movie is in control of the, you know, so it's the director of what's going on right now. And in the last movie, there are things like when Kirby says to Jill, like, you know, promise you won't kill me before you get in the car. You know, he's saying to Jill, promise you won't kill me, you know.
I actually thought Kirby, when I first watched that movie, I thought Kirby was one of the killers.
I thought
her and Emma Roberts were like the two female characters, you know, they're trying to switch it up and make,
because
you know,
she was very enigmatic. She wasn't just a fade into the background, blend into the background type of character. Hayden Panettiere's
up in your face.
Yeah, and she's got this attitude, and especially with that character and with the new haircut she had and all this kind of stuff. You know, it definitely kind of threw you for a loop, especially how knowledgeable she was on horror movies and everything.
But if you look at, here's the thing, if you base it, and they've been teaching us this since, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, the point I was getting through with all that, with you can go back and watch and get little signs. When you do that with part 2, you don't really get that. Like, you see Debbie Salt walking away before something will happen. And you see that Mickey's not there when certain things happen and everything like that. But there's nothing, not that I can remember at least, that it can be like, oh, that's a little nudge right there that you would only get if you've already seen the movie and know that they're the killer. You know, like all the things that we've described.
Well, you're talking about part 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, see, and that's why I was saying with Laurie Metcalf's character, it was just really obvious something was up with her. I mean, she was just kind of in your face, and it didn't seem like it was that type of movie where they were like, hey, we're going to add in just another random character, an older lady that's a journalist. You know, it's like, no, that doesn't make any sense, you know. So I knew something was up with her, and I knew she had to have something to do with it because she was just really weird character. And then, like with that 4th one, you would think that, you know, we thought it was Kirby was one of the killers too. But, you know, I almost felt like I knew it was her niece, because her niece, like, you bring in a family member, you know, and who's part of this world and has grown up knowing that her cousin and her aunt are, you know, have this huge nationwide know who they are kind of thing, you know, and you kind of feel like Emma Roberts was she didn't really play like much of a role in the movie, you know, like she till the end, you know, when you find out she's a killer and then she ends up, you know,
and that should have been one of those clues because really she doesn't. The only thing that she's a part of is during one of the first attacks when they come into their house and she gets her arm cut, right? Yeah. So she had to be a victim, right? Yeah. And so, but that was really the only time that she's around for Eddie. So that should have been a sign. Like, okay, if she's supposed to be the new Sydney and why isn't she playing a bigger role? You know? Right, the movie was marketed like she was going to be the one to take over the reins from Sydney. And that's the twist. I'm glad they did that because you think, okay, now it's been, how many years had it been since the previous Scream? Like 10, 15 years? Yeah. So how do we bring this back and still make it an original idea? Oh, okay.
You hand the reins over.
Yeah, you hand the reins over to somebody, or you show that this person is going to be the new Sydney. You twist it up, and that's actually the ghost face, and it's still Sydney's still the same Sydney. You know, so it might have been better if Kirby, you know, Hayden Panettiere's character would have somehow like ended up taking over that role in a way. You know what I mean? And they're saying that it could be in part 5. Maybe she'll come back because was she killed? I'm trying to think. Was she killed? She was stabbed 2 or 3 times by Charlie. That's right. And because remember, he's like, you know, now you like me. We spent 4 years and all. Now you like me. But she dropped, and she was in like her own blood there and everything. But she was still moving, and apparently Wes Craven left that part in there where she was still moving as something to say, well, maybe she'll be brought back. I mean, I could see her taking over because she'd be a more enigmatic kind of character take on Sydney, I guess. You know, like I think she would have done a better role
being a lot more outgoing. And
Talking about Kirby.
Yeah, because I mean, Neve Campbell. It's after the first one, she just went into hiding.
Well, Wes Craven, he set it up. He set that last movie up to where Jill and Kirby could come back because Kirby, he left that intentionally in there to that's the last time we saw her was her on the ground going, ugh. But we never actually see her go, just die off. Yeah. We see her in the process of dying, but we never actually. It's one of those rare cases where we never actually see her die. Yeah. Which has happened to Dewey and Randy, and they survived. So maybe
Campbell. I mean, she got stabbed twice at the end of that movie.
So she might be alive. And Jill is the only main killer to not be shot in the head point blank range.
True.
Billy Loomis was shot in the head. Debbie was shot in the head. Yeah. Mickey was shot a bunch of times. Yeah. Roman was shot in the head by Dewey. So everybody's been shot in the head. Now you got the tertiary killers like Stu and your Mickey and Charlie who just got stabbed. I mean Mickey, he's done. But it left it open so those two other characters could come back. I felt like Part 4 was a movie of cameos.
Yeah. Well, it was borderline horrible. Like borderline almost
as far as the cameos go.
Well, but just the movie in general. I think it got so close. It was teetering on the edge of whether or not it was going to be an extremely horrible movie.
Do you think this was worse than Part 2?
Yeah, I have. Well, yes and no. I mean, Part 2 was a little bit more jokingly, where Part 4 is a lot more darker.
What do you enjoy more? I guess maybe not saying objectively. What do you enjoy watching?
Part 4. Yeah.
So, I mean, you could say, Part 2 is closer to the Scream as we know it, whereas Part 4 is trying to reinvent. So maybe you like it, maybe you won't.
Yeah. I like Emma. To be honest with you, I like Emma Roberts in these roles.
That's what your daughter said.
Yeah, American Horror Story. She does excellent role in that. I mean, when she plays that villain / hero kind of.
She's in Scream Queens too, isn't she?
Yeah, and she always plays kind of like she's just a total.
Your daughter said she's always a bee that's trying to be famous.
Yes, she's always a bee trying to be famous, or she's always a bee the bee
that lives in apartment C.
Yeah, that's now that I think about it, it's like same thing with Yep. That's what Scream and for American Horror Story it was the same situation.
Yeah. So it was. I don't know. They had all these cameos, right? So you start off, it had Lucy Hale, and I can't remember what the other girl's name was. That was the movie inside the movie. Yeah. And then the movie had Anna Paquin and Kristen Bell. Yeah. And then the actual real life...
had the blonde girl from... she was in...
Britt Robertson is her name. She was in The Dome and...
not the Covenant, that one witch one that shit was on CW. What was it called?
I don't know.
The wife loved it.
I don't watch that stuff. But, Britt Robertson is the name. She was in The Dome. And then, of course, then you have all your main actors. But then you have Seth Cohen as a cop, I don't even know. I can't remember.
The fourth one?
What's his real name? I always call him Seth Cohen. Adam Brody. That's it. And you have Anthony Anderson. You have Marley Shelton. Is that her name? I can't remember.
Yeah.
As the deputy chick who made the lemon bars.
Oh yeah. That was another one of those characters that he has in every single one of those Scream movies. They're thrown in a certain character that you kind of be like, okay, is this person stupid or dumb?
Like when she was standing in the dark and she's like, I was just checking on her.
Yeah,
and she's like, why? This isn't even creepy. You're trying to make it creepy.
I know it's just like a weird. random character that whether or not they die or not. It's kind of like Rosamund. No,
I think that was the worst fake out with her. They're trying to frame it as that blonde deputy. I think that because she would stand in the dark. I'm like, I don't buy it.
Yeah,
don't buy it. But besides that, you also have who's the girl from Community? Alison Brie.
Alison Brie,
yeah. She was in it, and then who else was there? There's got to be more cameos.
It's hard to see her in anything but besides Community. To be honest with you, Alison Brie.
Yeah,
it's extremely hard. She got that show Glow on Netflix.
So the guy who played the other film nerd, what was his name? Not Charlie, but anyways, the guy that had the video camera on his head. He was from Jericho. He played the kid in Jericho, which is also where Skeet Ulrich, who was Billy Loomis, he was also in. But We didn't say much. We didn't get too much into 3. Part 2. Matthew Lillard was in part 2. Did you know about that? So, at the time, he was dating Neve Campbell, and so he was visiting the set, and seeing her and seeing some of the older, David Arquette and Courtney Cox and stuff like that. So he was visiting the set, and he's actually in one of the scenes in part 2. He's in the party that they're having at the frat house. Mm-hmm. He's in one of the back. He has very light blonde hair. I think it was from Star Commander, or what was that Commander that he was in with Freddie Prinze Jr.?
Yeah, he was in a lot of movies with Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yeah, but what was that one?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Commander.
It's like Star Commander.
Anyways, he
that.
had like bleach blonde hair and everything, but you can see him in the background there. Part 3, you had McDreamy. He was probably my least favorite part, or my least favorite character in like the entire series. I didn't like Kincaid.
Or Cotton went out in that one.
I loved Cotton Weary's.
Randy went out in the second one. So basically, by the time we hit 4th, we literally only have 3 characters left, right?
Well, I mean, you think about it. I think I told Keely this. Every movie ends with the 3 main characters and an extra and a spare, So you have the first movie, you had Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Neve Campbell, and Randy. Randy was the extra. In part 2, you had Cotton Weary was the extra left over, out of the cast there.
Well, you did still have the main 3 plus Randy plus Cotton Weary on that one.
Yeah, but Cotton Weary wasn't in the first one. He was like in a news clip or whatever, but he wasn't part of the main cast. I'm talking about out of the main cast, you always have the 3 left over plus 1 extra, 1 spare. So in the first movie, it was Randy. In the second movie, it was Cotton Weary. In the third movie, it was Kincaid. And in the fourth movie...
Which you never see him. But I mean, that movie's like, what, 10 years later?
Might have been Kirby, if she's still alive.
Yeah.
But everybody else died. Oh, what did you think of the Billy Loomis replacement? I think I had a couple notes on part 4. His name was Trevor. He played Joe Roberts' boyfriend. Good gosh, I don't know. I don't know if it's just this new generation or what. But I looked at all these kids in the school, and I'm like, I wouldn't be scared of one person here, even when I was in school. It's just
I thought the whole Trevor thing is, again, they're trying to make you think that he is maybe a murderer. But I mean, seriously, at the first 5 minutes of meeting this character, you're like, he's an idiot. There's no way that he's a murderer.
He's not intimidating.
No, he's not. And he just keeps popping up just randomly. And it's like, okay, we get it. You're trying to tell us something that he might be a murderer, he might be a killer, and but at the end you do kind of realize why he's around, because they want to blame him for everything. And the fact that oh, well, you didn't grow up in this family. No, I'm pretty sure you did not get affected by anything that your cousin... Yeah, okay, people might have known that was your cousin. If anything, that would have made you popular. But her reasoning behind being a killer on the fourth one was...
It was a little shaky, but I mean...
You broke up with me, so I'm going to blame you for murder.
Yeah, I think that was just an excuse. I think she was already going down that rabbit hole from a while ago. And, it's... I don't know if anybody really, any of them really have convincing reasons why they went a certain way. I'd say, Billy and Stu's are probably the most believable. Maybe not even Stu, but I always wonder how, you got the person with the plan. It's Billy Loomis, Mrs. Loomis, obviously 3 doesn't count, and Jill Roberts. They're the ones with the plan. How do you get a Stu? How do you get a Mickey? How do you get a Charlie? How do you get these people? I wonder what that conversation is. Do you start out saying, "Hey, have you ever wanted to kill anybody?" How would Stu have that, or how would Billy have that conversation with Stu? How would this person? Obviously the Mrs. Loomis went online.
It goes in the fact of you go to the Columbine kids.
Who's monitoring those websites that Mrs. Loomis found Mickey on?
But you know what I'm saying? It's you run into these. There's evil people in the world. You know what I mean? And all it takes is just one glimpse of another person's evil, I think, to connect them.
Maybe a psychopath is very very attuned
to find other psychopaths,
person's nature, and so maybe that's it. But your least favorite movie of the series?
It's probably not one. It's probably going to be my least favorite. As far as keeping with the originality, it would have to be 4, but as far as in general, probably 2 is my least favorite.
Yeah. I've never liked 2, and I've always liked 3. And this last time I've watched it, I liked 2 a lot more than I had before, and I liked 3 a little less than I have before. Maybe I was actually evaluating them for their cinematic merits or whatever, but
I just wanted Randy to live the entire time.
Yeah.
Like Jamie Kennedy, like I liked his character. I liked the Randy character. He even helped him in the third one. I just wanted him to, I thought it would have been awesome if because it would have shown that his knowledge, like he's on the total opposite spectrum as Billy was, where, he's trying to survive a horror movie where Billy is trying to cause a horror movie. You know what I mean?
So conduct a horror movie.
Yeah, and for Randy to live, it just goes to show that Randy sticks by his rules. You know?
But by college he'd probably lost his virginity by then, and so he lost his innocence of.
No,
that
he said
had
he
in the
did.
first
Remember
movie.
in the video that they watched in the third one, he mentioned her.
Yeah, but he mentioned he wanted to be with a certain, but he never said that was his first or whatever. But I don't know. I think that 2 needed as much weight as you could get for it to be impactful and for it to mean something, and so they had to kill somebody off, and they're not going to kill off Dewey and Gale. Obviously, they're not going to kill off Sidney. So Randy was the next one. They needed some kind of weight, and I would wish he would have been alive, but then
they should have killed off Gale. I'm sorry, but they should have killed her off because, like, her character is kind of annoying more than anything. I mean, again, I do say that she was the one that always needed redemption. But it came to a certain point where, like people. That's the point they were trying to make in these movies is that you do stupid things, you get stupid prizes. You know what I mean? It's like you don't follow the rules of scary movies, then you get dead. And she constantly did not follow the rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then I don't know if you'd have as good a driving force for Dewey because, well, he saw Sidney as a sister, and he'd always be saving, or at least being there to help fight. He was mainly there for Gale. Like in the first one, it was just whatever, and he was flirting with her a lot, but. In the second one, he was with Gale. In the third one, he was with Gale. And the last one, he was, pretty much with Gale. So I don't know. I don't know if you could get rid of her. I think Randy, as much as it sucked, I was kind of glad it happened because it added some seriousness to it. Because up to that point in the movie, I was just kind of like not really checked into it. But as soon as Randy dies, then you go, oh, okay, it was something. This is serious now. Certain people can die, so now you start paying attention a little bit more. I did like 2 a lot more than I have in the past. And I know there's huge fans of it. I didn't like the killers that much, and that's me. I'm a huge Raylan fan and Justified, and I like Timothy Olyphant. He was not good in this role. And Laurie Metcalf, she did as good as she can. She's a great actress and everything. But it seemed weird to me. I don't know if I could have written a better sequel to one of the most iconic horror movies of all time. But, for what they had, I think they did an all right job. So, did you have anything else to say about these movies?
No, not really. I mean, it just shows to the genius of Wes Craven, to create the characters that he does. I mean, he's up there with James Cameron and Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and stuff. He needs to be. I mean, he's in his own category because he's the king of horror.
He's like the Spielberg of horror.
Yeah, he's the Spielberg of horror, but he deservedly needs to be up there with those great directors because it's just phenomenal ideas. And again, I am biased because my favorite ones are the Nightmare on Elm Street, but in general, I mean, nobody can deny that. I mean, yeah, you got Carpenter, things like that. Those certain directors that
Yeah, but John Carpenter, I mean, there was a lot of Halloween movies, but he was only involved in 2 of them.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of other movies he did, were just really great. But again, the quality with Wes Craven is just phenomenal. So
yeah, he definitely knows how to put you on the edge of your seat. Sometimes he's restricted by the story. But for the most part, he knows how to make you bite your fingernails and keep you on the edge of your your seat. Do you remember the first time we watched this? We were actually in Alvord, Texas, when we watched it with Lucas.
Really? Well, the first one? Because I swear I was in high school.
I mean, we had watched it in the thing, but this is like the first time it came out on video. We were watching it at home. We watched it over at, with Lucas. And, obviously, they weren't even allowed to watch The Simpsons. So that was interesting. But
I mean, I remember, because this is great movies, though.
Yeah.
Great movies. It did start that type of revolution for that type of movie. So
it really did. It revolutionized this type of movie, the slasher film, for good or for bad. And we don't see anything like it nowadays. Even the newer Scream is not quite like it was in the past.
I can't bring myself to watch the television show, to be honest with you.
I've saw the first half of the first episode of the first season, and I was like, okay, it's just going to be like a CW drama with killing in it, and I'm not about that.
It's even worse.
And
it's an MTV drama.
Exactly. They changed the mask. They changed the voice. I don't even know if there was a voice. I think in the third season they said they brought back the original mask, and the original guy that did the voice came back. But even so, I'm like, I'm good. But anyways, we really enjoy these movies. Definitely give them a watch. We think that you'll really enjoy them. All four of them. They're a good set of movies. The first few are a little older, but they're still worth the watch. So definitely give them a chance, especially the first one. It's one of the most iconic opening scenes, one of the most iconic scary movies of all time. Please go watch it. If you want to get a hold of us, we are on Twitter at The Post Credit. We're also on Instagram and Facebook at The Post Credit Podcast, and our email is thepostcreditpodcast@gmail.com. We also have a website now. We're www.thepostcreditpodcast.com. You can contact us through there if you want to get a hold of us through email or just send us a message. We have a few pictures and some about us, so you can get on there and check it out, see what you think, and contact us if you need to. We appreciate you guys listening, and we'll see you next time.
Throw me a bone.